Good morning, everyone. Goeiemorgen, Dumilang, and welcome to our virtual workshop for today. I see that there's a couple of service providers that's logged in, so we really want to welcome our members, our non-members, the service providers, our guests. And then I want to give a special welcome to our team as well. With me today is Leonie as well. Leonie, if you can switch on your video and say hi to us. Susan, welcome. Miranda, if you can switch on and just greet our members, non-members, and our guests. So
Morning.
welcome, everyone. Welcome. And today we decided to host this workshop. And I want to go a little bit into why we decided to host this workshop. So we saw that we hosted a compliance workshop on the 13th of March in Joburg, and we saw that there's still a big need for credit providers to understand the practical implementation and the steps and the tools for FICA compliance. And that is why we are hosting this workshop today. You will see that we will go from FICA compliance requirements to the reporting obligations to customer due diligence, because we really want to make sure that we cover all aspects in this workshop today so that you know exactly what you have to do in order to become FICA compliant. So we are really honored to have guest speakers here today from the FIC, and you will see that Yolandi Plaatjes and Verona Khan will be presenting today. We've almost divided the sessions into different parts. So we are going to first talk about understanding the FICA compliance landscape. We are going to talk about customer due diligence and employee screening. And then a little bit later on, we are going to talk about the reporting obligations and record keeping. We also have a couple of service providers that's going to present to you today. We have a few videos because they are the ones that can assist you with the practical implementation. They have systems and there's consultants that can assist you with setting up an RMCP. And if you don't know what all of these languages, what I'm talking about, you will definitely know after this workshop today. So please sit back, enjoy this workshop, take note of the things that we are talking about. This session is recorded so that you can refer back to it afterwards, and we will definitely make it available to everyone. So without further delay, I want to go into the workshop, and you will see that we have the service providers, and we really want to thank our sponsors for making this possible. Some of them are joining us today presenting to you, but if you want to talk to any one of these companies, you're welcome to contact the MFSA and we can share their contact details. Okay, so first up, we have a presentation that I'm going to take you through the service offering of the MFSA and the role that we play to assist our members with FICA compliance. So if we look back at the journey since the amendments were made to the FIC Act, this was in December 2022. This is the first notice that we sent to our members, informing them that there has been amendments. They have to take note of this, and it has come into effect on the 19th of December 2022. Early in 2023, we decided that we have to host a compliance session, and we talked about how, what, when, where, and why. Why do we have to comply with the FIC? How do I do this? And that was the first part of what we started offering to our members as a service in order to assist them. We consistently communicated with our members. At that stage, the accountable institutions, the credit providers, they were required to register with the FIC within 90 days. So we made sure that our members are aware of this, the non-members as well, so that they can register with the FIC in time. We sent another reminder on the registration, and then we had the opportunity to also invite Jan Augustijn, Advocate Jan Augustijn. He's currently working at the FIC still. He is working in the enforcement department, and this was the first engagement that we had with the FIC regarding this. He presented to our members, he went through the details of how to become FICA compliant, and he also explained why. And that is why we have Yolandi and Verona here as well, just to emphasize, to highlight again why this is really important. This has really been a focus for us since 2022, December 2022. We've consistently updated our members. We've shared the FRC media releases, making sure that our members are up to date with what's happening. We also had a meeting with the FRC that the FRC hosted on the 28th of March in 2023, where they informed us, about the number of registrations. They raised the concerns, and then we were also able to raise more awareness on the importance of registering with the FRC as soon as possible. We also had a meeting with the FRC that they hosted for the credit providers and our members in the sector. This took place in March 2023. So as you can see, there was a lot of engagements around the FICA compliance and why it is necessary. And then definitely MFSA at your service. We decided that we need to host another session. We had a digital contact session in May 2023 where we had the opportunity to invite Ashley Moy. I know that she's currently not working at the FRC anymore, but she was willing to share the guidance, the awareness around what is required. Then there was a notice from the FRC regarding Directive 7 for all accountable institutions to complete the risk compliance return. So here we were able to make sure that our members know where to submit. They know when to submit. And we were also able to engage with them on a call, on an email, in order to help them to understand what is required with this questionnaire. We also shared the recordings of the FRC webinars, the presentations that they had. And then we launched our FICA booklet. So we saw that there's really a need for a step-by-step outline on what is required. It does not necessarily mean it is something that you can take and you can use it as is, but it is a guideline. And that is why we have this booklet. In this booklet, there's also an RMCP example that you can look at. And still to today, the booklet is available to order. So Miranda is going to post the chat in the chat box the link. If you want to order this booklet, we have a soft copy available, we have a hard copy available, and this is really something that we are proud of, something that we can share with our members, for guidance. Then there was another notice issued by the FRC regarding the accurate completion of the risk and compliance return. So once again, making sure that our members know what is required. And then the FRC issued a final notice for accountable institutions that might face financial sanctions. So here we saw that things were really starting to get serious, and we had to communicate with our members. And this is something that we shared with them in order for them to complete the risk and compliance return, which is relating to Directive 7. We also then started seeing towards the end of 2023, beginning of 2024, that the FRC has embarked on risk and compliance reviews. So this is something that they started picking up in order to assist the credit providers, because they wanted to consult with the credit providers, the accountable institutions, in order to see where their status of compliance is at. So there's a few of our members that has attended these reviews, and we also knew exactly what they are looking at. Then the returns, there was a strong awareness raised amongst the FRC and the accountable institutions to complete this return. Still to today, there is an opportunity for accountable institutions to complete this return. And when we engaged with Jan Hussein earlier in this year, as we started preparing for the compliance workshop that took place in March, we asked him this question, that is there going to be a requirement for accountable institutions to submit this return on an annual basis? And he said yes, they are looking into that. We are waiting for final confirmation regarding that. So this is something that is really important, and it is not going to go away. If we look at the communication that the FIC sent as well, in addition, they issue guidance notes on the implementation of the TFS and many other, as well as the RMCP. So the MFSA then decided once again, we need to do more. We have to help our members and the credit providers to comply with the FIC Act. And that's why we launched our pre-recorded compliance guidelines. So we have one on the FICA compliance duties. We have an RMCP overview and an example. And once again, these are guidelines, but it is available for you to understand and assist you with this process. We have one on customer due diligence, employee screening, reporting, record keeping, and also the TFS list, suspicious and unusual transaction reporting, which is also going to be discussed today by Yorona and Yolandi. And then we saw that the FIC has really intensified their focus on ensuring compliance within our industry. So they looked at registration, they looked at the RCR questionnaire, they look at your RMCP and the business risk assessments that you have implemented, And once again, we wanted to make sure that our members are aware of what's happening, that this is really something that cannot be overlooked. The FIC issued a guidance on the interpretation of credit providers. We made sure that our members saw that communication, and then the RMCP guidance as well. And then we find ourselves in March 2025, where the FIC issued a notification of an upcoming request for accountable institutions to submit their RMCPs. And I think everyone then went, whoa. And then we find ourselves here today. There's been a lot of time going through this FICA compliance journey, and we know that the majority of our members are really pushing to comply, but this workshop is definitely still essential for our members. But then it's also for the new credit providers. We are aware that there's a lot of credit providers entering into the industry, registering with the NCR, and that's why this workshop is also for you. So what do we have to take note of? All credit providers must comply with the FICA Act. It is not negotiable. This is really something that all South Africans, all sectors in South Africa has to comply with. And just for clarity purposes, credit providers are deemed as accountable institutions in terms of Schedule 1, Item 11 of the FIC Act. We really want to urge you to look at this, to comply urgently, to implement, to train your staff, to look at what is required so that you can become compliant and avoid being issued with a financial or an administrative sanction. Then just also for new credit providers, if you register your entity with the CIPC, you have 90 days to register with the FIC. So if you need any guidance in this regard, you are welcome to contact us. Miranda, you can post your details in the chat box, your contact details. Susan, please post your contact details so that the people can reach out to us. And we want to assist you. We are here for you. We have guidelines available. We have service providers that's going to present today to also assist you. And there's consultants in the industry that can help you as well. What I want to mention is another one of the compliance requirements for FICA is you have to train your staff. You have to raise awareness amongst your staff members in order to become FICA compliant and also for them to understand the implications. So the MFSA applied for funding via the bank CETA, and this was really to support the industry. We are still busy with this project, and our members get access to free training. Why I'm mentioning this is because we have FICA and compliance courses available. So because it is a requirement, there is an opportunity here for you to actually have that training and implement for yourself. Just to show you these are the course offerings that we have available. You can see there's an all-in-one compliance awareness program, recovery of debt, understanding FICA, managing the NCA, and then also risk management. So these are some of the course offerings that we have, and our members get access to that for free. I really want to encourage the non-members here today to join the MFSA, to get access to the tools and the resources that you need in order to comply. We don't want you to be faced with a non-compliance or a challenge or a situation that will impact your business. We are really here to support you. And if you want to join the MFSA, Miranda is going to post a link in the chat box so that you can fill in your details and we can reach out to you and explain more about what we do and what is the benefit of membership. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much. I think it is really important for us to show you what we do, the services that we offer, how the MFSA plays a role with regards to FICA compliance. So thank you for indulging me. Without further delay, we are going to go into the next part of the workshop. So as I've mentioned, we have Verona and Yolandi Plaatjies from FIC here today, and we really want to thank them for the time that they took to actually host this workshop and present to our members. The first part that we will be covering is understanding the FICA compliance landscape, so the compliance requirements, the RMCP. So we have about 30 minutes to look at the presentations. But before we do, I want to introduce Verona. She is the LLB graduate from University of KZN. Some of you might have seen her as well at our compliance workshop that we hosted in March. She completed her articles at a global law firm. She entered the compliance field at Investec in 2021, and she joined the FIC in April 2024. So welcome, Verona. We really look forward to your participation. And then we have Yolandi Plaatjes. She is an admitted attorney. She has a lot of experience in the compliance sector, and she's currently the acting manager in guidance and outreach at the FIC. We can see that she brings a wealth of knowledge to the table today, and we really look forward to your presentation, Yolandi. So without further ado, I want to welcome you. You are welcome to continue with your presentation. And yes, thank you. Hey. Thank you, Yolandi.
Good morning, and thank you very much to Sinay and Leonie and the rest of the team there at the MFSA for inviting us. We really do appreciate these engagements, and we're looking forward to today's session.
Thank
I'm
you.
just about to share my screen. Okay, so as Leonie has mentioned, I'm the acting manager in the guidance and outreach space at the FIC. And Leonie, I must commend you for that timeline that you set out of the different actions that the FIC has taken in the past couple of years. As you all know, South Africa has been subject to a mutual evaluation, which was conducted in 2019. And the results of that was then published in a mutual evaluation report from the FATF, and it set out certain key criteria that South Africa as a country had to meet to comply with its obligations, both domestically as well as international standards that apply. Okay, so hopefully my presentation is visible and I can then proceed.
Yes, thank you so much, Yolandi.
Thank you. So in today's presentation, it's going to be very practical and give you an overview of the main obligations that an accountable institution, a credit provider, must comply with. So first off, applying a risk-based approach is always the starting block of applying the FICA Act compliance obligations and compliance obligations in general. You must understand where there's a higher risk in your organization, and you would apply enhanced controls to that higher risk. We've also got targeted financial sanctions, which is screening your clients against the targeted financial sanctions list. You must conduct customer due diligence. That is, know your client, obtaining the identification documents of your client, and so forth. You must understand if your client is politically exposed. There's certain enhanced controls you would apply there if your client is politically exposed. Account and transaction monitoring. When your client transacts, how do they transact? Is it normal for the client profile? Is there anything untoward? If there is anything untoward, suspicious, and unusual, then you would file a report through against that activity or transaction. You must provide training to your staff members, and as well as have a good governance structure in place. Governance structure being approval of an RMCP, very important, and the proper registration must be in place for yourselves on GoML as credit providers. I'll take you through that in a bit. All of these controls must be set out in a risk management and compliance program. Section 42 of the FICA Act actually sets out what all must be covered in an RMCP. There is other directives that speaks to requirements that must also be covered in an RMCP, but broadly it's set out in Section 42 of the FICA Act. You must also screen your employees for integrity and competence in terms of Directive 8. and that will also then be covered in your risk management and compliance program, and also submission of a risk and compliance return to the FIC in terms of Directive 7 and Directive 6. So the presentation is broadly going to cover each of these aspects in a bit more detail, and so that is what you can then look forward to. Okay, so first off, for registration, it's important to note that the following persons are considered to be credit providers. So a person who carries on the business of credit provider in terms of the National Credit Act. So where you have to register with a national credit regulator, then you are a credit provider in terms of item 11 of Schedule 1 to the FICA Act. Over and above that, there's a second category, category B, is a person who carries on the business of providing credit in terms of any credit agreement that is actually excluded from the application of the National Credit Act. So that's a broader category, and that ensures that all bigger entities that provide to the companies and so forth are also captured within the item if they provide credit to those entities. This was updated. Sunay also provided a timeline. It was updated in 2022. The new schedule items came about, and that's a broader category having to register. How exactly to register on the FIC website? I'm just trying to reduce. Sorry. How exactly to register? So you would go onto the FIC website. There is a tab that says register or report. You click on that tab, and then that would take you through to the GOML system. You would then register an organization profile. You'd get an org ID number, and then you'd also register a user against that org ID profile. That organization number is very important. Once you have that, it speaks to all the communication that you will engage with the FIC throughout your the duration that you are an accountable institution. So go onto the website, look for the tab that says register or report, and there you can click through and then register. Make sure that your registration information is always up to date. There is certain directives that states that you have to have all your information there, and it must be up to date. So this just shows you the landing page there that says register. Register as a person or register as an organization. If you're brand new, you would then click on register as an organization. You'd complete all of your information on there. Very important, first-time registrations, the compliance officer of your organization must register the institution. And that compliance officer would then upload what's referred to as an authorization letter and a copy of the ID. Oftentimes we see what happens is entities register, but they fail to submit or attach their organization, the authorization letter, or a copy of their ID, and then their registration is in actual fact rejected. So that may be a reason if you are struggling to register. That may very well be the main reason why you are getting rejections on your SHREGs that you receive back. A SHREG is basically a reference number that shows your registration application has been received and has been processed or rejected. So first things first is registration on the GoML platform. After you have registered, you have to have what's referred to as a risk management and compliance program. I will, in the next few slides, take you through what is included in an RMCP. But importantly to note is that in March, and Sunay has mentioned that in March, a notice went out to all registered accountable institutions stating that they must in actual fact upload and submit their RMCPs on GoML. The way in which to do this is, again, go to the MyGoML page, log in, and then you'll see on the top tab there it says MyGoML, My Org Details. If you click on My Org Details and you scroll right to the bottom of that page, you'll see there's attachments there. There's a place where you can actually attach your files. You would then search for your RMCP, click on Upload, and then you would submit your request or submit your RMCP at least through there on that My Org Details page. What we've seen happen is that entities would upload the RMCP, but the RMCP, they'd see this red cross. So there at the center of your page, you see the red cross. Don't click on that red cross. That red cross, in actual fact, means it's uploaded. And if you click on it, you're actually removing the upload. And a lot of times the entities click on it and then they submit. And then they, in actual fact, submitted nothing through to the center. Also, when you're submitting your risk management and compliance program, make sure that it's the latest approved risk management and compliance program, and make sure that it's saved in the right date format. So you'll see there the naming convention we have there is year, month, and date, underscore RMCP. Make sure that it's in that format, saved in that format, and then you upload the latest RMCP onto your My Org Details page, and you click on Submit Request. I've seen a question come through on the chat box of whether or not you receive confirmation of submission. You would receive what's referred to as an automated email with a shreg, and that shreg would indicate whether it has been accepted or rejected, whether your RMCP has been accepted or rejected. So a lot of times, if the RMCP that's submitted is not the right document or in not the right format, then the institution would receive a rejection on their submission. So you would receive some sort of approval or rejection on that. So then we come to the drafting and implementation of an RMCP and what all needs to be in an RMCP. And I'll take you through that in a bit. What the FICA has done is we've published Guidance Note 7A sometime in March or sometime in February at least. And the emphasis that that Guidance Note 7A actually brings about is the importance of the role of the board of directors of your institution. If there's no board of directors, the senior management or the person with the highest level of authority. So yeah, it is always that person with the highest level of authority. Actually, it's always the board of directors. If there's no board of directors, senior management, or if there's no senior management per se, the person with the highest level of authority that must approve the RMCP. So when an inspector or so walks into your institution and they ask you for an approved RMCP, they are going to test who actually approved that RMCP. That obligation, oftentimes we've seen inspectors walking into an institution and that approval has been delegated to another employee or committee. There already it speaks to some sort of failure on the part of the organization to ensure that it is approved by board of directors, senior management, or person with the highest level of authority. So this is just an example of that. For the bigger accountable institutions, you can have committees that advise your board of directors on whether or not the RMCP is suitable, but that committee cannot take the final decision of approval. It must be that board of directors, senior management, or person with the highest level of authority that actually approves it. Also there, whatever document or documents that your RMCP is documented in must comprehensively describe the risk that you face as an organization and what controls you have in place as an organization to mitigate the risk, and then also what monitoring measures you have in place to monitor whether or not those controls actually work. So it must be able to demonstrate that the persons who actually approved it applied their mind. They understand the money laundering, terrorist financing, and proliferation financing the entity faces, and they are happy that the controls that are set out in that RMCP document is actually fit for purpose and it's going to meet that requirements of mitigating that risk. So that broadly speaks to the role of the board of directors, senior management, or persons with the highest level of authority. Then Guidance Note 7 goes on to state that there is actually 3 parts that should be specifically identifiable in your RMCP. The first part that I spoke to a bit is your identification and assessment of risk. You look at all your products and services that you provide, and you'll try to see if there's what risk of abuse does each product and service face specifically. If a short-term loan, for example, a flexible short-term loan, for example, in comparison to a mortgage loan, you think that a mortgage loan is subject to less abuse, then they document that type of rationale in your RMCP. And then obviously from that flows the mitigation controls. If you think that a product faces a higher risk of being abused, you'd put a bit more controls around that product, checks and balances. You can apply enhanced due diligence when you're dealing with a client, when you're offering that product. And then you can do monitoring proportionately to the risk. Similarly, certain client types pose a heightened risk of money laundering, terrorist financing, proliferation financing, abuse. As your part 1, as your part of identification, document the different types of client types that you deal with and assess those client types. You might say that client types that are foreign nationals in comparison to South African nationals may pose different levels of risk. You may even say that clients that are politically exposed pose different risks to clients that are not politically exposed. So that type of rationale you'll document in your RMCP. And again, you'll speak to the mitigation controls, whether or not you must perform enhanced due diligence. Enhanced due diligence is calling for a bit more information on the client and so forth. And then obviously your part 3 of your RMCP document, setting out how you're going to monitor whether or not your controls are working. So look at section 42 of the FIC Act. It sets out what all must be covered in your RMCP in detail. Your CDD measures, your screening measures, your reporting measures, how to identify and assess risk, and how to put in place your mitigation controls. What the FIC has done is, and this document is subject to updating, but please, I would urge you to download it. Public Compliance Communication 53. If you scroll right to the bottom of this guidance product, you'll see there's actually a RMCP document template that is specifically designed for the smaller DNFBPs, designated non-financial businesses and professions. So there, this document is quite useful. It sets out a framework. It cannot, and I must stress, it can't be copied and pasted. If an inspector walks into your institution and they test your RMCP, this would definitely assist you in documenting some sort of RMCP, but don't just copy and paste it because then you are going to fall short of the requirement. Look at this document, see whatever updates have been made from the date of publication of PCC 53. There's been quite a few updates in terms of the General Law Anti-Money Laundering and Combating Terrorist Financing Act that actually changes this document. So what the FIC is going to do is we will publish an update to this PCC in this financial year, which will be PCC 53A. Until such time, I think this document does still provide some value in that it gives you a great outline from which you can then work to update and insert all your requirements in. So as a starting point, download Guidance Note 7A, Chapter 4, and PCC 53. It helps you in setting out the framework of your RMCP. From there, you look at what Section 42 says, what all must be covered in your RMCP, and you work that out as a base. Okay, so I'll move on to touch a bit more in detail on a risk-based approach. Remember, I mentioned the part 1 is identification and assessment of risk. I'm going to go into that a bit more in detail so that you can understand what I've referred to. So your first starting point is assessing the risk your organization faces. And you'd include that type of assessment in your RMCP, and you'd refer to that as an entity-wide risk assessment. Anti-money laundering, counter-terrorist financing, counter-proliferation financing, risk assessment. There, what can you look at to try and see what type of risk your sector faces? There is certain risk assessments that is published from a regulated side. So the FIC has published specifically a terrorist financing risk assessment. There, it sets out which sectors face risk from a TF perspective. It gives you an idea of what type of factors you can consider when you're conducting your risk assessments within your organization. Also, the sectoral risk assessments. I don't know if my colleague is in the room, but a bit later he might answer questions around this. So the FIC has published, in 2022, we've published a sector risk assessment on credit, the credit sector. That is due for updating as well. But that type of sector risk assessment, you can look at it as a credit provider and then see what the risks we as the regulator think you face as a credit provider. That can be factored into your own entity-wide risk assessment when you are conducting that. So that's that third bullet point where you yourself will conduct an entity-wide risk assessment and you'll document it in your RMCP. Okay, so now when I state entity-wide business level risk assessment, so this is just an example of the product, looking at your products that you offer. And again, we're not the specialists on credit specifically. So if I've given examples there of credit products that are not really relevant to your organization, please forgive me, but this just gives you an idea of how to consider the different products. So look at a long-term mortgage loan. It's a very regulated, when you go to a bank, any other type of credit provider that provides mortgage loans, it's quite regulated. They ask you for a lot of documents, and there's a lot of T's and C's that you need to complete, contracts, engagements with not only one accountable institution, but a multiple of accountable institutions. So that in itself lowers that risk of that product being abused for money laundering or terrorist financing. You don't find clients going to organizations taking out a mortgage loan and then repaying it within a short period of time. It doesn't really happen. Compare that maybe to a short-term flexible loan, where a client comes in today and they take out the loan. You pay that loan into their bank account. It then reflects as a valid, legitimate loan that they've received in their bank account. But then tomorrow they come back and they repay that loan. The questions arise of why would they repay it so quickly? Now it's reflecting as a legitimate payment in the account, but then the repayment was done so quickly, it would raise some sort of red flags in your world to say, what was the necessity even of taking out that loan by the client if they were going to repay it so fast and with cash repayments or so forth? So just going through the first row, long-term mortgage loan. And for that product type or for that business type, you see that your clients are predominantly lower risk. So you don't have a lot of high risk clients, and it's more regulated in your opinion, and you provide it predominantly in Gauteng, but you take into account that there's maybe a higher level of predicate crimes in Gauteng. You provide this type of product face to face. All of those factors combined, then you would think that that business interaction or that business unit that provides this service actually faces a medium risk of being abused for money laundering and terrorist financing. That medium risk then dictates the levels of controls that you would put in place. You wouldn't have to put that stringent controls in place. Compared to maybe a short-term flexible loan that you offer, majority of your clients are high risk. For example, a foreign politically exposed person, large number of cash repayments in that space, in that product space. A lot of your clients are based in Gauteng. They want to deal non-face-to-face or on-board non-face-to-face. And there are certain media reports that you've taken into account as well for that product segment. There, overall, the risk rating could be high. For example, there again, you'd put some sort of higher controls in place. So all of these factors, again, list all your different products you offer and assess them to see if they provide a bit more, if they're open to a bit more abuse or so forth. And then you document that as part of your risk assessment. Similarly, you can do that for clients. You can look at the different client types you onboard, natural person versus legal entity. And there you could see all factors combined, whether or not the business relationship with that client is high risk or the business relationship is medium risk. So in your RMCP, you'd have a definite section that sets out your risk assessment framework, documenting all the different factors, and just saying whether or not you think it's a high, medium, or low risk or so forth. And that would then form part of your entity-wide risk assessment. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Different clients, products, delivery channels, areas that you'd take into account. And that would then dictate whether or not you must ask for more information, conduct a bit more monitoring on the client, or so forth. Okay, so I think that then nicely brings me to the end of this part of the presentation, and then I'll hand it back to Sunay to take it from here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Yolandi. I think, looking at the presentation that you have just shared with us and the RMCP details, we can see that you're really unpacking the details of the RMCP. So I'm really looking forward to the questions and answers. And before we get to that, I want us to just take, a breather. We're going to look at a video from Micromax. So before we get into the questions, please post them in the chat box, and then we will answer them. Thank you.
Imagine navigating a stormy sea of regulations, where one wrong move could sink your business with fines and license risks. In microfinance, compliance isn't just paperwork, it's the backbone of your operation. But keeping up with FIC rules, that's a full-time job on its own. Enter Max Money, your compass in this chaos. For over 34 years, MycoMax has been pioneering solutions, and Max Money is here to steer you through compliance with ease. It's cloud-based, intuitive, and built to tackle the toughest challenges in microfinance. How does it work? Start with our AML tools. They catch financial crimes before they hit your doorstep. Then, sanction checks keep you in line with the latest regulations. No sweat. And with clear reporting, you're always audit ready, with data that's easy to understand and share. It's compliance simplified. But Max Money isn't just about checking boxes. It's about keeping you shielded from penalties, those hefty fines and license threats that haunt every lender. Plus, it sharpens your decisions with deeper insights into client risks, so you're not just surviving, you're thriving. It's peace of mind that lets you focus on growth, not guesswork. Ready to turn compliance into your edge? With Max Money, you can innovate, collaborate, and elevate your business like never before. Visit mycomax.com today and see how we're transforming microfinance, one smart solution at a time. Innovate, collaborate, elevate with Max Money.
Right. So, for those of you that want to reach out to Micromax and for them to contact you, Miranda just posted a link in the chat box. So, please fill in your contact details. We will share it with Micromax so that they can reach out to you. Okay. And now, Leonie, I'm going to hand over to you to facilitate the questions and answer session for us. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for attending this session. I think the information that I've heard so far, it is enlightening, and sometimes it's a repetition, and sometimes it's new stuff that we are hearing. So I think, I've got a couple of questions that I firstly want to pose to the FIC because in this grouping, we've got a lot of members and non-members currently. So the members, the majority of our members already has an RMCP or they are busy with an RMCP, but there's also non-members, that want to get compliant. Now, firstly, our rates and fees has not been increased for 10 years. A lot of legislation has changed. So all of these additional compliance requirements is actually costing our members a lot of money. And I'm seeing a lot of questions to say, can I develop my own RMCP? And I actually want to ask this question to the FIC, and then I will also be able to provide some inputs. But can the credit providers draft and do their own RMCPs, or must they make use of an attorney or an outside company? And what is the risks involved in drafting your own RMCP?
Thanks for that, Leonie. So the thing about compliance requirements is the cost of compliance is proportionate to the risk. So the higher the risk of the business type products that you provide and the clientele that you engage with, that will actually drive your compliance cost. So definitely it is, again, the risk-based approach does impact upon the cost. The cost of compliance is directly linked to whether there's a heightened risk. And at the FIC, we are of the view that there is a heightened risk. It does obviously warrant that you put in place that controls that mitigate the money laundering or the terrorist financing abuse. So that message has always been the message that we put out around whether or not the entity can actually draft their own risk management and compliance program. Definitely, entities can draft their own risk management and compliance programs. It does, and that's the reason why, in actual fact, we have published Public Compliance Communication 53 with that draft framework. So we've seen a lot of the smaller entities do struggle with RMCPs, and so we've set out in that draft framework, we've covered all the bases of Section 42. What has happened since then is there has been amendments to the legislation. So the General Law Amendment Act and amendment to Paktatara and so forth, which actually made it a bit tricky in that there's certain parts of that guidance that needs to be updated. However, that being said, the guidance still does provide valuable input. You can take it, BCC 53, together with Guidance Note 7A, and use that as a base if you are going to, as an accountable institution, draft your own RMCP. You'll use that as a base and you'll look at whatever updates has been made. You can download the FICA Act booklet, which sets out the latest position, the latest legislation. And you'll also have Directive 7 at hand and Directive 8 at hand, and you'll work that into your RMCP. And in that way, you know your RMCP covers the latest legislative requirements. But again, don't just copy and paste. It is something that the inspectors are wary of when we do provide these type of templates. We are looking that they are customized. Thank you.
Okay. So one of the other questions that I also have is, what are the areas that you are seeing that credit providers are struggling with regards to their RMCP? So when they do their RMCP, what are the areas that they are not clear on, or that they are not explaining enough, or do not have enough information on?
I think and this is more an inspection and enforcement type question. But what I can say is, of the findings that they've highlighted is business risk assessments. Those slides that spoke to entity-wide risk assessments, where you actually look at, if you have different divisions within your organization, you look at those different divisions individually to see if Division A faces a heightened risk in comparison to Division B, for example. You then put in place a bit more controls in Division A. So it's that example of the mortgage loan in comparison to the short-term loan products, that type of risk assessment, and actually documenting it in your RMCP, documenting the risk level, medium, high, or low, and then also showing what controls you are putting in place that's proportionate to that risk. That's one of the main things that organizations struggle with, specifically the smaller accountable institutions. If you go to other risks, that other compliance obligations that they do struggle with, of late it was maybe beneficial ownership. When you're dealing with a company providing loans to a small company, just understand who is the beneficial owner there. It's more of a concern within, I think, the bigger accountable institutions that offer credit. Target financial sanctions as well. Do you screen your clients against the target financial sanctions list? That is some of the key requirements that I can highlight right now. Thanks.
Okay, the other question that I have for you is, how often should credit providers be reviewing and updating their RMCPs, especially in light of the FATF recommendations and changing in the risk environment? So how often should it be reviewed?
Well, at least annually, have a look at your RMCP, because risks do change. A lot can change over a year. Your business might not face the same risk this year that it faces next year. That being said, there could be shorter periods. If you see some sort of trigger event, if there's a report published that shows that a lot of credit providers were actually implicated or used in some sort of scheme or so forth, that would be a trigger event to look at your RMCP and see if there's any controls that you need to maybe update.
Yeah. Okay, so we have different service providers that can help with RMCPs, and, just from the knowledge that I have, an RMCP is a custom-made document. There's not a one size fits all. So, there's no template that you can put out there for everyone to follow the same RMCP. So I'm going to give the floor now to Arno, just to explain to the guys that do not have an RMCP, how certain consultants can assist them, because in my opinion, it's easier to work through a consultant. They know exactly what to do, what changes, needs to be made, and to inform you when things change. So I don't know, what is important in an RMCP, and what is the processes that can be followed in order for credit providers to get an RMCP as soon as possible?
Thank you, Leonie. So I saw a question a bit earlier. Someone asking why is it so expensive? Um, I think what is very very important is that you are definitely able to construct your RMCP yourself. In fact, you would be very well advised to go through the documents which were mentioned here today. You need to be knowledgeable about what needs to go into your RMCP in any event. So I wouldn't say there must be a heavy reliance on attorneys or consultants concerning the construction of your RMCP. In order for a consultant to be able to assist you in any event, he would need to spend quite a bit of time with you, fully understanding and comprehending everything concerning your business and your
Um,
products. Um, the requirement is there to identify, assess, monitor, mitigate, and manage risk, as have been explained earlier. So the risk assessment is absolutely crucial. So I wouldn't advise against engaging consultants. It's good to have that engagement with people that's got knowledge and experience in that area. But what I definitely will do is advise people to go to the FICS website. Your PCCs and the necessary directives. PCC 53 is there. The necessary directives are there. The Act is there. Section 42. It's important in any event to make sure that you understand why you are doing this, what it needs to be, what it needs to consist of. It is a living document. You're going to need to make it part and parcel of your business to ensure that you are continuously compliant. And then obviously training is a big aspect. It's not only for you, it's for your entire business. Very,
mhm.
very important. So
I
yes,
think another.
seek assistance, but educate yourself. It's so important. It's very good to see that. I think there's over 300 people joining today, which is brilliant. But you are going to need to understand the concepts. Why am I doing this? What do I need to do, and what do I need um, to include to ensure that I am compliant?
So I think, Arno, a question here from Paul is we need to know that we are doing the correct checks and what steps are taken. So are FIC directly involved with the service providers, and are all checks are then pointed in one direction from a FIC master list? So I think he's referring to the FIC checks, how do they know the service providers, are legal and compliant, and are, the service providers doing the right checks?
Checks meaning in
Your
the
your,
construction
your
of.
screen, yes.
So yeah, that's actually a good question. There are accredited databases where these checks are performed, and it's important to ensure that you are linking into someone that's got the necessary accreditation and that are able to perform those checks, especially when it comes to your PEP and your PIPs. TFS list, I think that is a website, and that's also on the FICS website where you can access that. Um, what I just always say, and people needs to understand, it's not a scenario that, and it's also been mentioned that there's a checklist. I do these checks and now I'm compliant. That's not what it is. It needs to tie in with your risk assessment. You need to know who you are doing business with. So it is not,
Yeah.
you're not going to be compliant, and I'm sure the FIC will and have said that. When they get to your business, they're not going to ask you, please show me that you've done your PEP and your PIPs and your sanction checks in respect of your transactions. It is whether your RMCP exists, whether you understand the risks, whether you have the necessary mitigating and are you managing that risk correctly? And as part of that, there's the customer due diligence, which includes the checks. We get a lot of people that say, "Oh, I'm able to do those checks, so I'm good, I'm fine, and the FIC shouldn't have a problem." I think they will indeed have a problem. It is much more than that. It's a complete risk assessment with a customer due diligence so that you understand and know who you are dealing with. And then obviously there's a reporting requirement depending on your customer due diligence.
Yeah, and I also told the members now that the MFSA, in collaboration with consultants like you, can assist our members in doing a RMCP for a minimal price, for a price much more affordable than a non-member. So I think speak to Arno and his team, Susan or Miranda, if you can post the details of Arno's information, contact him. He can assist with the RMCP. And there's also other service providers that are going to do presentations today that can help you with your checks, and possibly also developing your RMCP. So know that there is help out there. And usually for MFSA members, the fees are much less when compared to the non-members. So Arno, I also want to talk a little bit about non-compliance and enforcement. Now, what are the most common findings or weaknesses the FIC has seen in the credit provider sector when conducting compliance assessments?
The things that we've seen is non-compliance or lack in terms of customer due diligence. Notes are what I would say is probably the things that stand out. And I think it's quite common when you engage with these type of clients, you quickly gather that this has been a project that's sort of pushed down and possibly consultants involved, and so forth. And that's why it's so important to educate yourself on these things. One would think it is, because it is quite an abstract notion because of the risk-based approach. It's not like the NCA that says, this is what you can do and this is what you can't do and this is what you can charge and this is what you can't charge. So it could possibly be quite an abstract notion to fully comprehend. But if you read the Act, it's not necessarily that difficult. And FIC compared to the NCA, there are so many documents on the website that can assist you with what you need to know, and how to equip your business to be compliant. And it's just a matter of going through. And the MFSA template and booklet is a good place to start, absolutely. But
Yeah.
everything is on the FIC website. So it is important to have that, to educate yourself and your staff, to say, look, everything is there. Just go read up on it, and you'll have a better comprehension of what is required. And from what we've seen, the interaction that our clients have had with FIC has been very constructive. It's not, you haven't done this, so this is necessarily what's going to happen. So there's a lot of guidance, which is brilliant. There's a lot
Yeah.
of guidance, and directives to ensure you are assisted to getting to a place where you are compliant, and you do get afforded the opportunity to correct certain things that requires correction. So yeah, I can say from the clients that we've had that's had interaction with the FIC, it's not necessarily a negative thing or this daunting thing. But I suppose then you will need to at least be in a space where you have an RMCP, you understand your RMCP, and you have that in place. If your RMCP, I could only imagine the interaction is not going to be constructive, but a bit more harsh. There will be a more harsh approach in respect of those accountable institutions.
Yeah. Do you want to add something, Yolandi?
Yes, so on the questions that I see around whether or not there's an accredited list or so forth of service providers. So there's not an accredited list that the FIC actually subscribes to or backs or so forth. There's no list of service providers. It is up to the accountable institution to do their checks on whichever service providers they do seek services from. What I can say is that specifically around the PEP screening, it has been something that has been questioned. Is there a specific service provider that can provide a PEP list? There again, we have published some guidance which sets out certain lists of websites that you can take into account, PCC 51. On the targeted financial sanctions list, and I see a question coming from Paul quite a lot about this, and it's quite important to clarify that the targeted financial sanctions list is published on the FIC website, so you can have a look at that then. So thanks for that.
Right. Then a question that I have for FIC itself is, you know, we are seeing, as you can see on this chat as well, that there's a number of credit providers that are not compliant. They may have registered or they may have not have registered. They may have an RMCP or they don't. Is there any flexibility or additional support available for smaller or rural credit providers struggling to meet the FIC registration and also compliance deadlines?
So it definitely, if you are within the space of an accountable institution, you're providing that credit, there is regulatory parameters within which you need to operate. There's no exemption in terms of the registration requirement. I wouldn't say that, so first off, there's no exemption. The requirement is clear. If you register as a credit provider, 90 days within which you need to register as an accountable institution. There's our call center. You can phone into our call center if you're struggling to register. There is also a query, a line that you can actually send through a written query to the FIC to ask for guidance on how to register and so forth. Again, we try our best. We are very understanding in that there are smaller entities that definitely do need assistance, and we try our best to assist. But I can't say that there's some sort of exemption. There's no exemption from the requirement to register within the required period.
Thing is, I see some people say I cannot reset my GoIML profile as I forgot the username and they're struggling to get feedback. Is there a specific contact person within FIC that I can contact if, you know, the smaller guys are struggling?
So what has happened is we've received quite an influx of queries, specifically in March around the RMCP. So I'd like to just highlight that if your query does take a bit of time, it is because we've dealt with an influx of queries around specifically the RMCP submission. When you submit your registration application, you will receive a reference number. And then afterwards, you will receive an email notification advising if it's successful or not successful. So just do monitor, obviously, your emails to see for your reference number. Once you've received your reference number and you have not received confirmation of registration, you can then use that SHREG number to send through a query to the FIC or phone us. There's not one dedicated person. There is a data systems team that actually looks after the registration, but I can't point you to one specific person at this point.
So what would happen if a credit provider didn't register within the 90 days? What would your recommendation be for them to become as compliant as possible now?
Submit your documents. Make sure that you attach your authorization letter and a copy of your ID. Know that the registration is a two-step process. You first register your organization, and then you register a user against that organization profile. Once you've registered and you receive your confirmation of registration, submit your RMCP immediately and submit your risk and compliance return. That will put you in a best position if ever you do face some sort of enforcement action. It might be seen as a mitigating factor. The fact that you've tried to register without delay when you became aware of the non-compliance. and then also submitted your RCR and RMCP again without delay.
Okay, great. I think this questions and answers, that is the stuff that we want to get into. But I think for now, we have run a little bit out of time. And now I am going to hand over to Sunay again.
Thank you so much, Leonie, for facilitating our question and answer session. Like Leonie mentioned, I think there's a lot of aspects to take into consideration, and especially for our the smaller entities. And Yolandi, I think also from our side, we discussed that we are going to do the questions in writing so that we can share the feedback as well with everyone in attendance. So before we go into the next part on customer due diligence, with Yolandi, we are going to look at a video of ACPAS and AML Go, followed by a presentation. Thank you. Great. Mia, we are going to welcome you to take us through your demo of AML Go. So you are welcome to proceed. Yes.
Thank you very much, Sunay. Thanks, everyone, for the opportunity. Okay, so what does AML Go do? AML Go is a platform where you can do your FICA screening. And it also includes a customized risk matrix that is developed from your RMCP. So for people that are interested, you can simply head over to amlgo.co.za and you can register for free. So we urge members to go ahead and register. All it's going to ask you is for your username, your email, password, and then your company information. And then once you've entered your company information, there will also be an area for you to upload your RMCP that will be on your connected to your branch then. So once you've subscribed to the service, you can simply sign in and then head over to your branch. Over here, you'll see that your RMCP document is on the branch itself. You can go ahead and download that if you are unsure of what your RMCP states for you to do in terms of your AML and PEP and sanction screening. So how it works is we've got because the FIC also requires you to screen your own employees. You've got your clients, and then you've got two different types of clients. So you've got individuals for short-term credit providers that typically extend credit to individuals. You'll load them over here, and then also entities for those that are doing business with businesses. And each of these have their own risk matrix that's developed from your RMCP. So in terms of your own business, you've got your business details over here. Your FIC organization number will be in there. And then also in terms of your directors, your shareholders and your employees, you can then have a different screening process for each of those, and that's specifically developed and custom developed for you when you subscribe to the service. Once you upload your RMCP, we'll take that document in and then set up your risk matrix. So when you do screening, when you're onboarding customers, you'll simply go select a new individual and then type in the details over here. As you can see, it's not a lot of information that's required. So, but the more information you input, the stricter the check becomes, and which means that you'll have less false positives at the end of the day. All right. So if we do screening on a person, let's go in here. When you do screening on a person, you will see there's a tab that's called the risk matrix. And when you do the risk matrix check, and as Arne alluded to earlier, FICA compliance is not just screening. It also you need to take into consideration what are the actual risks in your business in terms of AML and CFT. All right. So when we do the risk matrix, it's going to populate either one or more options. So if you've just loaded this client as an individual, you can do the individual screening. If you've loaded this individual as an employee also, there will be a different risk matrix. And like I said, those are all developed right from your RMCP. So you can simply upload the RMCP. Our support team will take that and then set up your risk matrix accordingly. All right. So in this case, this is for, let's say, for instance, a short-term credit provider. You'll have questions that's related to your risk. So what is related to, customer risk, your product risk, your jurisdiction risk, and then delivery channel risk. Delivery channel meaning how does the person get access to the product, and how do you provide that product? What channel do you use to provide that product? So in this case, let's say, for instance, this is a short-term credit provider. This is the risk matrix that we've set up for this person. You'll simply select the answers and the questions. These answers have a risk score associated with them. So once you've performed your screening and you click save, this is now going to do a check against the targeted financial sanctions list. And then also we check against 1,200 international databases. And within those databases, there are thousands of consolidated and unconsolidated lists, meaning that you'll be able to pick up a sanctioned individual, but you'll also be able to pick up an individual that is politically exposed or politically influential, for both foreign politically exposed persons and domestic politically exposed persons. Okay, so once you've done the screening, it will give you a result to tell you no match has been found, or either that a match has been found. So meaning if it's no match has been found, it means that that person is clear, they're not on the TFS list, and they are not politically exposed also. What we then do is we provide you with a report. So that risk matrix report that you've conducted, there will be an actual report that is returned to you that will take into consideration the accountable institution's details. So your FIC organization number, your business registration number also, and then it will give you the outcome of that screening. So although this person wasn't found on either a PEP or a sanctions list, my risk in terms of my RMCP dictated that this person would have been a medium risk. And that's because of the due diligence process, that questionnaire that I've completed. It takes into consideration the business risk, not only the PEP and sanction screen itself. And that's very important. A lot of service providers out there, they provide you with a screen it seems sufficient, but that's not what your RMCP dictates or what the FIC actually requires from you. The FIC requires from you to assess the risk for each person that you're onboarded, and then the business transaction that you're entering into specifically. All right, so then the report is also populated with the client information. It will then tell you over here whether it's matched to a PEP or a sanctions list. In this case, there's no match. but the risk score of this person was 40.74, which means that they are a medium risk. And then it will also show you, it will give you a date and a timestamp of when you perform that screening. And then it's going to show you what your risk selections actually were. So it will give you whatever you've answered on this side from the questionnaire, it's going to calculate a risk according to that and then give you an outcome. All right. It also gives you the thresholds. So in this case, a low risk will be anything from between 1 to 31, and then medium from 31 to 71, and then a high risk from 71 onwards. In this case, you can see that this person was a medium risk, and then you need to follow the process as dictated by your RMCP. So if your RMCP dictates that if I identify a high-risk client, then I need to perform enhanced due diligence. And this system makes it easy for you because everything is built in. So even the layers from your basic due diligence or your simplified due diligence up to standard due diligence and then ultimately enhanced due diligence. All right. So if someone has been identified on a list, on let's say PEP or a sanctions list, that branch owner, the branch owner or the compliance department will get an alert like this, like a Facebook notification, and they will get an email to tell them that this person was flagged as either a possible PEP or a possible sanction. All right. Once you've entered into that task, you can then, as the branch owner or the compliance officer, you can then go ahead and manage that task. It will be in a filtered view like this. And then you can work directly on that task to identify whether this person is indeed the PEP or the sanction that you've identified. So just to give you an idea of what that looks like, we then also give you a generic flow. So for instance, if I've identified someone as being a positive sanctions match, again, the information is right here. It will also give you the risk matrix over here, so you can download that report directly from the task to verify that information. So in this case, you will see that this person has been flagged, and then it will tell you where it was flagged. It was flagged against a sanctions match. It overrides the score automatically to a high risk score because they've been identified as either a PEP or a sanction, and then it's going to give you the information where that listing came from. So in this case, that listing came from the OFAC, and that will then give you the information directly to that listing, so you can verify whether this person is indeed the sanctioned individual that's being onboarded or doing a business transaction with you. All right. So if you've identified like in this case where the person is a positive sanctions match, there will be conditions. These can be customized, but it's the basic conditions of you to follow the process. So in this case, you will see that this person was identified as a positive sanctions match. Then whatever that outcome is, the conditions of that task will then be changed according to what you need to do next. So in this case, where the person was a positive sanctions match, the task will tell the person the steps that they need to follow is the immediate action that they need to take is they need to freeze the account or transaction immediately. They need to restrict access to the identified funds or assets, and then they need to report to the FIC immediately on that person. And they would then need to either submit a suspicious transaction report or a suspicious activity report, or a terrorist property report in the case where you already have the assets in your belonging. And then you select the sub-status here over here to say this is the outcome of this actual client. All right. So the whole process The system is task-driven, so it helps you with the entire process. Although you still need to follow the rules of the FIC to submit the various reports, the system will guide you into doing so. All right. And then it also works with credits. So if you each check or risk matrix that you perform will consume a credit. And then for MFSA members that can prove that have a valid MFSA membership, there's also discounted pricing. The pricing is on the website, but there's a preferential pricing specifically for MFSA members. All right, and then if you will get, it will show you how many credits you have left. It will also notify you that you are running low on credits. And then if you need to buy more credits, you simply click over here. You enter the amount of credits that you need. You select pay now. And then that is going to take you to an option where you can either pay with credit or debit card or instant EFT, a normal EFT. And that will then send you the invoice and then reassign more credits to you. All right. Okay, so, and the same thing goes for entities. So once you've loaded an entity, you can then go ahead and screen them. It will then pick up whether that entity was on a sanctions list yeah, if that entity is on a sanctions list, and then again give you the task to tell you how to proceed next. And that's all customizable based on your RMCP, your unique RMCP. All right. And then each of those types of clients have its own risk matrix that we set up. So we can set up the risk matrix according to your RMCP, your rules. So as you can see over here, for individuals, they have a specific risk matrix. For entity directors that you need to screen. If you're engaging in business with a business, you want to screen those directors as well. You'll see that there's a different set of questions that are asked then. And these are all customized according to your RMCP. All right, then we can also set up like I mentioned earlier, the basic due diligence process, standard due diligence. So let's say you only ask 2 questions initially during your basic due diligence process, then only those 2 questions will be displayed. If the person scores as a high risk on those 2 questions, they will automatically proceed to the standard due diligence. Again, if they score high there, it will revert to the enhanced due diligence. So it gives you an entire flow of what you need to do to stay compliant in terms of what your RMCP dictates specifically. All right. And again, like I mentioned, if you're unsure at any stage on what process you need to follow next, you can simply go ahead and download your RMCP over here. And that will then give you that document, and you've got direct access to that RMCP to know how to proceed next. I think, yeah, so that's that. This is an onboarding solution, and then we help you with your FICA compliance by doing the screening, and then also incorporated into that screening process is your due diligence process, which is really essentially your risks that have been determined by your RMCP. And that's that. So if you need any assistance or you have you show any interest in this product, simply head over to amlgo.co.za and then you can register on there for free. Thank you so much, Sunay. Thanks. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mia. Yes, I think that is very detailed and it gives you a practical example of what's required. And we are going to talk about the customer due diligence in a while. And if you want to reach out to AML the link is in the chat box. Fill in your details, they can reach out. Yolandi, while I welcome you to go into the next part of the presentation, I think it's good for us to just highlight the difference between Go AML and AML Go. So Go AML is the official portal for the FIC. And then AML Go is the service provider that can give you the system and the technology to actually do the checks. So yes, just I saw a few questions on that. So Yolandi, thank you so much. Let's get into the next part of the presentation on the checks and the customer due diligence.
Good morning, everyone. Hi.
Hi,
Actually, it's going to be me taking us through customer due diligence
Perfect.
and all of those things that are related to customer due diligence. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for still staying if you have been here since 10 o'clock. I know it is a lot of information, but please bear with us. Let me share my screen. Give me a second. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Not yet, not yet.
Okay, hold on. Here we go. This is the right screen. Okay.
It's
I'm
coming
just gonna
through. Perfect.
switch off my camera, but let me know if you can still hear me and I'm still audible. So before I go into customer due diligence, and we're going to be talking about that scary word, beneficial ownership and training of employees and things like that, I just want to echo Arno's sentiment of like, please make yourself familiar, make the FIC website your best friend. I saw a lot of questions about where to find, PCC 53, where to find guidance note 7A. All the PCCs, all the directives, all the guidance notes can be found on the FIC website. So it's www.fic.gov.za. If you just go there, you'll see there's also a sector-specific page for credit providers that has the sector risk assessment and has all the documents for credit providers specifically that will help you. Okay, so let me go. Okay, so when we talk about customer due diligence and AML Go, the service provider touched on it, what do we mean and what do you need to incorporate in your RMCP? So your RMCP is your living document and it's basically your be all and end all. It needs to be a guideline. It needs to tell us what processes are you implementing in terms of customer due diligence. And when we say CDD, we say CDD a lot. We mean customer due diligence. We mean that before you establish a business relationship or before the client is onboarded onto your books, as soon as the client walks into your door, you need to understand who this client is. So as per Section 20A of the Financial Intelligence Center Act of the FIC Act, you may not do business with an anonymous client or a client with a false or apparent false or fictitious name. You need to obtain and record, so it's double obligation, obtain and record client information. So you need to identify and verify a client. You need to know who is walking on the door, who am I establishing this business relationship with. If it is a single transaction, and a single transaction is defined in the money laundering and terror financing control regulations, where the amount is 5,000 Rand, and it's concluded on once-off basis, 5,000 Rand and more, and it's concluded on a once-off basis. There's no expectation that this client is going to be a long-term client. But I don't think this is applicable for this sector because, as I understand credit transactions, because of the repayment of the loan, it would be an ongoing client relationship. If it is a single transaction, you still need to identify and verify that client. However, if it's an ongoing transaction, which is more applicable for this sector and for your business, you need to identify all prospective clients, all clients who may walk through the door, who may do business with you. Identify if there's anyone authorized to act on behalf of those clients. Once you've identified, so you know I'm talking to Farona Khan, she wants a loan, you need to verify that identity. You need to verify that this really is Farona Khan that I'm speaking to. And how you go about doing that is up to you based on the risk-based approach. And that's what needs to be put into your RMCP document, those processes as to how did I identify this client? Is there anyone acting on behalf of Farona Khan? Who is Farona Khan? And is this really who I'm speaking to? Is this really who I'm dealing with? And that's why the last point says it needs to be in line with your RMCP. So your RMCP is that guideline that has all the processes. CDD also requires you, that obligation is all-encompassing. It also requires you to understand and obtain information on the following. So the nature of the business relationship. So it's an ongoing business relationship. What product is the client taking? Why is the client taking this product? What is the purpose of this business relationship? Where is the client getting the funds from? The source of funds. And again, how you do this, how you determine and obtain and record all of this information must be documented in your RMCP. So once you've completed your CDD, you've screened your client, you understand who this person is, you need to understand who is the beneficial owner. Okay. And when we talk about beneficial owner, what we mean is we're looking for this natural person. We're looking for this warm body who ultimately derives benefit, who ultimately controls our client. So in this sector, I don't think, and I stand to be corrected, Sine or Leonie can correct me, the structures are pretty simple. So you would automatically be dealing with the natural person, and that natural person would be your beneficial owner. But just in case there are complex structures involved, we're going to be looking at the section dealing with beneficial ownership, as well as the 3-step process of elimination that we need to undertake. So it has been mentioned the General Laws Amendment Act came about in 2022. It had a whole host of amendments, and one of those amendments was to the definition of beneficial owners. I'm just going to read through it quickly. The beneficial owner is defined as a natural person who directly or indirectly ultimately owns or exercises effective control of the client of the accountable institution, so your client, or if your client's a legal person, partnership, or trust, who owns or exercises effective control over that legal person, partnership, or trust. Or is there someone who exercises control of your client on behalf of whom the transaction is being conducted? And if your client is a legal person, a partnership, or trust, there are certain individuals, there are certain role players that you must identify in terms of those subsections. So this entire definition basically can be boiled down to look for that natural person, look for that warm body who either directly or indirectly ultimately owns your client or exercises control of your client. A legal person is any person other than a natural person, so anyone other than an individual, anyone other than a warm body, that establishes a business relationship or enters into a single transaction with an accountable institution. So that would be yourself. It can include a company, close corporation, a foreign company, or any other form of foreign corporate arrangement. Excludes a trust, partnership, or sole proprietor, because obviously a sole proprietor is a single person. So I'm going to come to Public Compliance Communication 59. It was published in August of last year, and it introduced the 5% threshold. And with the new definition of beneficial ownership and with the risk that the FATF had identified in terms of South Africa's risk exposure, in terms of or regarding beneficial ownership, we realized that we were very vulnerable in terms of beneficial ownership. And to mitigate that risk, you're all about risk mitigation here, right? To mitigate that risk, we introduced the 5% threshold. There were many factors, many reasons why it was settled at 5%, and one of that is to bring it in line with the regulations to the Companies Act, specifically Regulation 32A, which basically says that a company must maintain a register of all those individuals who own beneficial ownership in excess of 5% of that shareholding or that number of securities in that company, and that register needs to keep record of certain details. For our purposes, for the FIC Act, we have a specific section that gives us guidance. It gives us the process of elimination. It gives us a 3-step process as to how to find this warm body. How do I find this ultimate beneficial owner? And we look at section 21B. So your obligation in terms of section 21B is not only to understand and obtain information on the nature of the client's business, but you need to understand and obtain information on the ownership and the control structure of the client. So you have to demonstrate as an accountable institution that you've established the ownership structure or the control structure and the control structure of the client. You must be able to provide information of the different ownership interests that may be at play in your structure. So if it's a company, maybe there are different shareholding types or different forms of shares that are being held in this company. And you need to understand, as an accountable institution, understand your client, understand what legal entity type they are, because that legal entity type poses different risks. So for example, an unlisted company versus a listed company. A listed company is highly regulated versus an unlisted company that's not as regulated, or maybe there's different shareholding structures that are at play. For your sector, because you're dealing mainly with individuals, understand the risk that a client walks in through the door. What risks does that client bring? I mentioned Public Compliance Communication 59, or for short PCC 59. It had been published last year, August, and it underwent extensive consultation periods from November 2023, so over a year. The PCC, the publication of the PCC was driven by many things. So general awareness on beneficial ownership was needed. We needed to interpret this new definition of beneficial ownership that the General Laws Amendment Act brought about. It came as a result of supervisory body requests, updates to the FICA Act, of course, and also, very important, the FATF grey listing findings. So the findings as to the lack of transparency of beneficial ownership, our vulnerability as a country, where complex structures are being abused for money laundering, terrorist financing, and proliferation financing risk. There were many sources used in drafting this PCC. So this PCC basically takes you through not only the definition, but it has practical examples of how to find the beneficial owner. So please do have a look at it. The FICA Act was used, alignment with the Companies Act, the Trust Property Control Act. We looked at FATF guidance and country comparisons to understand what different regimes are out there and what would work for South Africa. So I mentioned Section 21B, and I mentioned that there's a process to find this warm body. So Section 21B contains a process of elimination. So basically, there are 3 steps that you use to look for your warm body. Step 1 tells you look at controlling ownership interest, and I think this is the more applicable one for the sector. You look at the natural person, your warm body that has controlling ownership interest. Of course, controlling ownership interest would look different compared depending on the legal entity type. So if you're dealing with an unlisted company, controlling ownership interest would be in the form of shares. So you look at the natural person who has that 5% threshold or more of the controlling ownership interest of the shares. If there is no natural person, so you've looked through the structure, you've looked through this client, and you've looked through the controlling structure, you see there's no warm body that owns controlling ownership interest that meets the threshold, you go to the second step. And the second step is exercises control through other means. In PCC 59, there's a whole list, an extensive list of what control through other means could be in the form of. So for example, it could be in the form of delegated authority, could be in the form of power of attorney, or a formal nominee arrangement. It also depends on what is possible for your legal entity type, for the client that you are dealing with. If you can't find a natural person or warm body, there's still no one that can be identified as the beneficial owner who exercises control through other means. You go to the third and final step. So you look at the person, the natural person who exercises control over the management, the day-to-day affairs of your client. Okay. So step 1, really, let's go back to that. Let's go back to controlling ownership interest. Controlling ownership interest means the ability of a natural person, by virtue of ownership interest in the legal person, to control or to take decisions regarding or to influence the resolutions, decisions, or business operations of that legal person. So here we look at the percentage of ownership interest to determine if this natural person has a level of influence or control over your client. So there is a change of the percentage, and I mentioned it before. So we previously dealt with the 25% threshold as per guidance note 7A, but with the publication of Public Compliance Communication 59 last year, August, the new threshold applies, which is 5% threshold. So when you're looking for your beneficial owner, when you're looking for that warm body, you're going to look for the person who owns 5% or more of that entity, of that client. So why 5%? And I did allude to it before. It's about South Africa's vulnerability, South Africa's abuse. There was a trend of abuse of the beneficial ownership structure noted by the FATF. It was to align to Regulation 32A, so to align to other pieces of legislation. If you are looking at your structure and you see that it's too diluted or it's too dispersed, maybe there's only, for example, if it's a listed company, there's only 2% shareholding that you can find, then you move on to the next level of, or the next step of elimination. Again, I think step 1 might be more applicable. So this is only for those very complex structures. If you want to go lower than the 5%, then it depends on of course, your risk-based approach. So if there's a higher risk of money laundering, terrorist financing, or proliferation financing risk, if maybe your natural person is a foreign politically exposed person, and we'll deal with PEPs in a minute. If maybe there's a high-risk domestic PEP or a high-risk prominent influential person who is the client or acting on behalf of the client, or if maybe there is significant adverse media on the client. So when you do your client due diligence or your customer due diligence and you note that there has been either fines or findings of significant adverse media on this client, or maybe this person has been the subject of a number of regulatory reports, that could warrant looking at a less percentage, so looking lower than 5%. Please do take into account the different types of ownership rights that may be at play in a structure, that may be possible in a structure, because different ownership rights may carry different weights and would affect your UBO, which affect who actually exercise influence and control over the structure. Accountable institutions are cautioned that when you're applying the threshold approach to the 5%, please do conduct a holistic ownership assessment to determine if there are any other natural persons that may be in the structure that actually look like they own a small percentage, but when you look across the structure, they own a great amount of percentage when you aggregate the amount, and it actually equals to 5% or more of a controlling ownership interest. So if it's a complex structure with multiple layers, just be aware of natural persons in your client that may own a greater ownership interest than meets the eye. So you just have to do a little bit more digging. Before we go on to PEPs, the last piece of beneficial ownership, it's important that you must evidence that you have followed Section 21B, so that you have followed step 1, step 2, step 3 of the beneficial ownership in the process of elimination. And remember, the way you identify and verify your beneficial owner and the way you carry out this process must be incorporated in your RMCP. So when we talk about customer due diligence, we need to be able to screen and we need to be able to identify if our client is a politically exposed person, either a foreign politically exposed person, domestic politically exposed person, or a prominent influential person. So we refer to them as PEPs or PIPs. And with the General Laws Amendment Act, Schedule 3 was amended to include the definition of, to rework the definition of PEPs and PIPs. So when we talk about a politically exposed person, these people have, because of the virtue of the position they hold, and because this position may be susceptible or opened to abuse of corruption and abuse of the position and abuse in terms of money laundering, terrorist financing, and proliferation financing risk, we need enhanced due diligence measures when it comes to PEPs, foreign or high-risk domestic PEPs. So a little bit more work needs to be done, and I'll tell you what steps need to be done. So who is a domestic politically exposed person? So we look to Schedule 3A, and we have a screenshot of it here, and it's also in your FIC Act. It would be, for example, our president, it would be a government minister, it would be an executive mayor. And the rule with a politically exposed person is once a PEP, always a PEP. So these are domestic PEPs. A foreign PEP would be the foreign equivalent, so the head of state of a country or a government, member of a foreign royal family, a high-ranking member of the military. So it would be a foreign national who holds one of these positions. And when we come to prominent influential person, we look to Schedule 3C of the FIC Act. This schedule is not in effect as yet, as the minister still needs to publish a notice in terms of the Gazette, in terms of the threshold that would activate this section. But it would be a prominent, an individual who holds up any one of these positions. So a chairperson of a board of directors, an executive officer, a financial officer of a company that provides goods or services to an organ of state, and then the threshold amount would apply. So let's say the client that walks in through the door, or someone who acts on behalf of the client, is an immediate family member or a known close associate of the client, is a PEP, a high-risk domestic PEP, or a foreign PEP, right? You would need to follow enhanced due diligence measures, and that means you would have to obtain senior management approval to establish that business relationship, to onboard that client and to do business with that client. Establish not only the source of funds, because remember, source of funds is part of your day-to-day customer due diligence obligations, but you would also have to establish their source of wealth, and you would need to conduct enhanced due diligence measures. So remember, the RBA, the risk-based approach, says that the risk measures that you put in place per client needs to match up and needs to measure up to that risk. So if you have a higher risk individual because they're a high risk domestic PEP, you need to conduct ongoing transaction monitoring, you need to conduct enhanced due diligence measures and further identification verification to make sure you've covered yourself and mitigated the risk. As I stated, if you want to know who is a domestic politically exposed person, you look at Schedule 3A, foreign politically exposed person, Schedule 3B, and a prominent influential person or a PIP, Schedule 3C. And all of these obligations and everything that you need to document when you're dealing with a PEP or a PIP, whether they're foreign PEPs, everything that you need to incorporate in your RMCP, you need to look to sections 21F, G, and H of the FICA Act. Now that we're done with CDD, what are our other obligations? So another obligation for an accountable institution to make sure they're FICA compliant is to appoint a compliance officer. So ultimately, the board of directors, and Yolandi mentioned it when she was discussing the approval of the RMCP, ultimately the board of directors, or the most senior management in your structure, is responsible for FICA Act compliance. However, sometimes it may be necessary to appoint a person to assist with this function, and in practice it's commonly referred to as a compliance officer. This compliance officer must have sufficient seniority to obviously fulfill the role, must be competent, have integrity, and screened against the targeted financial sanctions list. Also known, we also will look at Directive 8 employee screening in a minute. Okay. A further compliance obligation that accountable institutions must fulfill and has been mentioned before is training of employees, right? I know Sine has mentioned banking CETA and things like that. So in terms of Section 43, so that's the obligation. That's where the obligation stems from. You need to train your employees in terms of the RMCP, in terms of the FIC Act, in terms of money laundering, terrorist financing, and proliferation financing risk. This training is ongoing, and you must be able to demonstrate that the training was done. It has to be commensurate or in line with the employee's role. So depending on the role of the employee, how close to are they to the AML function? How detailed and structured, and how often does their training need to happen or need to occur depends on their role. Training is ongoing, so it can be as periodically as you determine as an accountable institution. So it can be yearly, bi-yearly, but it needs to be as and when changes are made to the RMCP. So for example, the RMCP would have to be updated now because of the Guidance Note 7A's publication. So you would have to provide training on what would that new requirement be and how does it change the RMCP. Directive 8, I've mentioned it before. It's commonly known as the Employee Screening Directive. So what you are doing here is you're screening employees for competency, for integrity, and you're screening them against the targeted financial sanctions to mitigate your money laundering, terrorist financing, and proliferation financing risk, and to prevent any abuse or to prevent any vulnerability of you as an accountable institution, of your business, to money laundering, terrorist financing, and proliferation financing risk. It is applicable to current and new employees. So if someone has left your employ, if they are no longer on your employee role, you don't have to scrutinize them against the TFS list. You don't have to screen them for competency and integrity. It must be done in a risk-based manner. So again, according to the role that they are going to perform, and it must be done, it's an ongoing requirement. So it must be done periodically as you determine in terms of your risk-based approach, how often does it need to be done to mitigate that risk that you face as an accountable institution? You have to keep records of the screening. And the frequency of how often you will be doing this employee screening must be recorded in your RMCP. There is a potential for administrative sanctions for non-compliance if you are inspected or if by the FIC. And we find that it's not an ongoing requirement or there are no records, then it may be a finding of non-compliance. A further obligation for accountable institutions, and I'm almost done, is transactional monitoring. So once the client has walked in through the door, you've onboarded them, you've conducted your identification, verification processes as per your RMCP, you've identified the beneficial owner, you know who you're dealing with, they're not a PEP, or maybe they are a domestic PEP and they're high risk, so you've conducted enhanced due diligence. Now the client relationship is ongoing and it's continuous. You need to monitor those transactions. You need to establish the source of funds right at the beginning when you onboard the client to ensure that when you're doing your transactional monitoring, all the transactions that you have been noting and that you see on your books, these are consistent with what you understand to be the client's business and risk profile. So maybe the client is high risk and you see that the transactions are actually not in keeping with that profile. You need to be able to ask those questions. You need to establish the background and purpose of all complex transactions. So you identify and you understand, why is this transaction occurring? Is it in keeping with the risk profile that I understand the client? Is it in keeping with the purpose of account? And if not, you need to ask the question. Or maybe even possibly submit a suspicious unusual transaction report, and we'll come to that later on in the presentation. If you have any doubts as an accountable institution of any information you've previously obtained, so maybe you've had this client in your books for 5 years and you onboarded them in 2020, but maybe you're having doubts about the accuracy or the adequacy of the information you've obtained, you need to repeat those customer due diligence steps. You need to repeat the identification and verification steps until you are satisfied that you have fulfilled that requirement in line with your RMCP. Okay, and that is it from my side of the obligations. I will hand over back to Sine.
Wow, thank you so much, Verona. I think there's a lot of information that you have shared with us, a lot of crucial information that we have to take note of. And I see that there's a few comments and questions in the chat box. So we are going to go into that now. I think this is a good discussion to have, and an important discussion. So before we look at the questions and the answers, we are going to have a video from TransUnion. Yes.
The TransUnion digital onboarding solution has recently been launched into the market to help our clients convert more good applicants into great customers. This can be achieved by improving the user experience and mitigating fraud. The digital onboarding solution stitches together multiple components into a single solution. The solution allows for savings of cost, time, and effort by having a single vendor and single integration points to consume multiple components. As the solution is provided through an API, we can assist across all channels, be it self-service in the form of web or app, as well as self-assisted from a call center or branch. This demo will showcase our entire solution set. However, since our solution has been built to be modular with microservices in flow, you can select the components you require and when you require them in your journey. The first part of the demo is the capturing of an applicant's email and phone number, which does two things. Firstly, it gets consent from the customer to do the necessary checks, and secondly, it gathers any information should the customer drop off during the process, making future contact much easier. The initial component in the TransUnion digital onboarding solution is document authentication, which offers the ability to authenticate and validate identity documents. The solution covers all major South African documents from passports to ID cards, Green Book IDs, and driver's licenses, but the solution is truly globalized, covering not only the South African market, but also 195 other countries and 4,500 different document types, giving the ability to verify South Africans as well as foreign nationals. The solution will help check against fraudsters who tamper with documents and reduces the need for large teams to manually review documents by eye, reducing time, effort, and costs, and increases the accuracy by using machine learning to check the documents. Within the demo, you can see the use of a green ID book. This is to showcase the power of the solution by doing document authentication with a document that is almost 20 years old. This also demonstrates the power of facial recognition, being able to compare a selfie today versus the document. This solution helps ensure that the applicant is the same person and not someone applying on behalf of someone else. This part of the solution is designed to prevent identity fraud via stolen IDs and potentially using a valid document but applying on someone else's name. As part of the completion of the triangulation of the three-way identity check, the solution completes a live call to Home Affairs and confirms the applicant's details matches, but also gets the photo back on record and compares the selfie to that picture from Home Affairs. At this stage, you can see manual capturing of the personal information required to do some of the checks. However, information can be extracted from certain ID documents through our solution called the OCR, or optical character recognition, which will autofill or pre-fill the application, which does two things. One, it will give a great customer experience as they don't have to type in this information, and secondly, it will give you comfort knowing that the data is coming from the source document and not prone to any potential capturing errors which may fail the process downstream and could cause the applicants to drop off and possibly not returning. In the next stage, the email and phone number are being pulled from the initial screen. All that is happening here is that the residential address is being captured, which will be compared to the bureau as a form of proof of address. At this point, there are multiple checks that are occurring in the background to help identify potential fraudsters and is not adding any friction to good customers. Examples of these include digital verification in the form of device by checking the applicant's device, email, and phone number, which is part of our multi-layered fraud detection strategy and techniques. As you can see at the bottom, these checks are done in real time. Now, this part of the demo is where the other additional solutions in the onboarding process can be seen, one of them being real-time account verification. Here we can verify an individual's bank account, ensuring that it does belong to them, and they are not using other individuals' bank account details, which is important to assist in fraud mitigation, but also provides accurate details to prevent any collection issues downstream. TransUnion has introduced an address verification capability where individuals can take a picture or upload their current proof of address documents such as utility bills or retail statements. We will use optical character recognition to extract the individual's details from the uploaded documents and validate it against the consumer application. Next is our proof of income solution, which works very similar to proof of address. In this solution, using the OCR capability enables TransUnion to extract income and expenditure information which can be used in affordability calculations from a single or multiple bank statements uploaded or retrieved online by the consumer. We also perform document checks to authenticate the bank account owner and the validity of the documents provided using our fraud tampering checks. The next part is not visible to the end user, but let us just show you the results of the onboarding process application that was just completed. The first thing that will be seen is the OCR, or optical character recognition, where you can see a name, surname, date of birth, and ID number extracted from the document, which can be used to pre-fill the application. Second is document authentication, which checks things such as the photo, the fonts, the security stamps and pixels, and the actual template itself. As you can see, all of that was clear and the document that was used was a valid and authentic identity document. Next is facial recognition, which then compares the selfie that's been taken to the picture on the ID document to make sure that it is in fact the correct person. There you can see that it is an 86.89% match. Next is the live call to Home Affairs to match the name and surname to what is at the department, including the most recent photo on file, which is returned to the solution. You can see this is a much more recent photo, which is actually from the ID card, hence a high percentage of 94.65% for the facial recognition score. Next is the fraud prevention model, which includes proof of residency where the applicant's data is checked and compared to the bureau to ensure that there are no risks or irregularities used in the application. Here is an FPM rating of 1, which means low risk. Real data has been used here, and that's why there are no irregularities found or low probabilities of suspicious data. Some of the other checks that were done in the background that may not have been seen in terms of the digital verification is that the email address is actually pinged live to check whether it is a valid or invalid email address. Along with the validity, we also look at the activity behind it. Basically, when the email was first created, how often it is used, and how many companies have seen it, as fraudsters will typically create an email address and use it the following day for the first time. Along with the verification activity, the system also looks to see if an email address was previously used in fraud. The next solution is digital verification. We have access to 10.4 billion devices worldwide and any device that accesses your platform. The system can identify if it is part of the 10.4 billion devices. If so, is it a good device or a bad device? Along with looking at the history of a device, it also looks at its current behavior. One of those behaviors being velocity. Is one device looking to open multiple applications on multiple accounts? Next is phone verification, where we look at the risk associated with a phone number similar to the checks done on email and device. There are hundreds of attributes that go into this score, including when the phone number was first created, the activity behind it, as well as comparing this data to the cellular database to ensure it is not fake or manufactured when the number was first used, and cycling of SIM cards through handsets. The system will provide a risk level as well as a risk score and determine whether to allow proof or to review and deny the application. Watch list. This is your PEP and sanctions to ensure individuals are not doing things such as money laundering or have any political exposure. Bank account verification is the check on an individual's bank account. This is the entire solution from identity to digital verification, as well as checking multiple broad consortium databases to help digitally onboard customers in real time.
Okay, great. Yes, so Miranda, if you can post the link in the chat box so that everyone can fill it in if they want TransUnion to contact them. I think, Leonie, without a delay, there's quite a few
Yes.
questions and comments. Please
So
continue with
the first thing, yeah, I want to touch on is I want to touch on everyone's faces in the comments and the chat boxes and on screen, and everyone is almost, you're concerned about, the cost of compliance. And I really do get that. This, like one of the comments, this is definitely exploitation to microlenders. Our industry is currently not making money due to the outdated rates we are using. We can't even afford to pay our creditors as we speak on our accounts or on arrears. So this is really a concern. And Verona and Yunandi, this is not your problem. But just to give you some background, is the industry is facing huge sustainability questions, because our rates and fees has not been reviewed in 10 years. So our big focus is now to get the rates and fees reviewed so that we can actually cover this cost of compliance, because it has not been reviewed for the past 10 years. Laws are changing, FIC compliance is changing, POPI came to in effect, affordability regulations changed. And when you are sitting in a capped environment, who has to absorb that? And you are completely right. We cannot, cipher this down to the consumer. This is something that the credit provider has to absorb. And to be very honest with you, Verona and Yolandi, is the reason why credit providers are not, grabbing this with both hands and complying is because they cannot afford it. They cannot afford an RMCP. They cannot afford all of these checks. They cannot afford all of these checks on their employees. It's all additional expenses that literally doesn't make any additional money for them. So we want to comply, but we can't comply. And the problem that this now actually creates is it's, detrimental to South Africa as a whole. And that's why we really want a review of the rates and fees. So I'm going to pose, it's a difficult question. Credit providers, we are concerned about the layered checks for both consumers and customers and employees that are becoming unaffordable, especially for smaller lenders, for guys only that has a turnover of, say, 100,000 Rand a month, already conducting credit checks. How does the FIC recommend balancing compliance with sustainability, because this is the problem that we are sitting now, compliance and sustainability.
There was response. So I touched on this a bit earlier with my opening remarks around the cost of compliance follows the level of risk that the actual institution faces. I want to give some comfort to the sector, specifically the microfinance sector specifically. I think the type of clients, and here, Leonie, you guys can advise a bit more on the type of clients the sector deals with. But the type of clients, majority are natural persons, right? And those companies that you actually deal with are the smaller companies. So already that makes your compliance obligation a bit less administrative intensive, in that when dealing with a natural client, you're dealing with a client that you're dealing with, it's fine. Dealing with a smaller company, that company already has its own obligation to disclose its beneficial owners to SIPC. The company is an intellectual property commission. So already when you onboard that small company or that small legal entity, they would be able to provide you with the relevant information. There, your beneficial ownership check would be done. So the whole process of elimination that Verona took you through, it is there. It can be applied. It's not that difficult to apply for your sector. It is a bit more difficult in the listed, when you're dealing with listed companies and so forth. That's for the bigger accountable institutions, bigger credit providers, that cost is there, and that raises the cost. Again, TFS lists, the Targeted Financial Sanctions list, it's available on our FIC website. It is free. It's free. You can go directly to the FIC website. It's the only list that we're saying you must screen your client against this Targeted Financial Sanctions list. So that's also a cost saving there. RMCP, we touched on it a bit there. This is the reason why we provide this guidance and these sessions. It's to alleviate these type of concerns. So the RMCP, we've provided that template. Again, it's not something that you have to go to a service provider for and pay an exorbitant amount for it. You can draft it, and it is up to you to understand the risk that you face and apply that understanding to the controls that you put in place in your institution. So that's just around the elements that I see they are cost saving, and just to give you some sort of comfort to the sector that, you know, the type of clients that you deal with, and because your financing is smaller, there may be that cost savings. But again, don't not do it. Don't not screen against the TFS list, because there's definite risk there. Targeted financial sanctions. I think I'll pause there for a second, and I've got a colleague online, Philip Langenhoven, and I want to hear if he wants to add anything to that response. Thanks.
Thank you, Yolandi. And sorry, can I go ahead, Leonie?
Please, yes.
Yeah, thank you, and a good day from our side. No, there's not a lot I can add to what Yolandi said. I think the cost of compliance is a question that we often get, not only from micro lenders, but also from other sectors, especially small businesses. And that is something that we are very well aware of. But unfortunately, you know, the Act doesn't make provision for exclusions. And just to reiterate what Yolandi said, we have really tried to create, you know, avenues to assist institutions in their FICA compliance. That's why we have issued the PCCs. If you look at PCC 53, personally, I don't even think you need somebody to assist you with your RMCP, because we've got a template, we've got an explanation. We have, you know, the guidance notes. And I think, you know, in all honesty, something like a RMCP, for example, is maybe a lot of work up front. But once you've done it and once you understand the risks and once you apply that RMCP, I don't think it should take up that much of your time or cost that much money. So my plea is that, you know, please make sure, as Yolandi said, that you do comply and follow the documents and look at the information that we have provided to make it easier for you to comply. It is there. That's why we have done it. So yeah, unfortunately, I cannot say that you don't have to comply because the law is there and it needs to be complied with, but we are trying from our side to make it easier for you. Thanks.
Okay, great. No, we obviously we want to comply. We are just finding it financially, you know, very difficult to comply. But I think, you know, if you say that the template can be used as a base to develop your RMCP from, I think that is good news, especially for the smaller guys. And I think the more intricate it becomes, I think, you know, use a service provider that can assist you with the right information. So just from my side, you know, on the requirements for employee screening, what is the minimum compliance requirement for employee screening under the FICA Act? Must all employees be screened to the same degree, or are screening risk-based depending on their roles? If you can maybe explain that would be quite informative.
Do you cover that?
No problem. Thank you, Leonie and Yolandi. So all employees, current and prospective employees, must be screened. So let's start there. That's our first step, right? So if your employee does not exist in your company anymore, if they are not in your employ, they're not on your HR payroll, don't worry about them. The second thing is you're screening for integrity and you're screening for competency. So of course, competency will depend on the role. Integrity, if you look at Public Compliance Communication 55, it mentions morals and it mentions, has this person been involved in, for example, a position that had that was in a company that dealt with was dealt a fine, for example. So you look at those kind of things for competency and integrity. And the factual screening, that is the targeted financial sanctions, that's the factual screening. You pop in Leonie's name. Is Leonie a sanctioned person? Is Leonie a sanctioned entity? Yes or no? If not, continue with the employee relationship. If yes, unfortunately, you can't continue with that relationship.
Okay, so it has to be done, everybody that's working with you. And how often should it be done? And in what type of roles? Is there certain roles that needs more screening, or is that dependent on your RMCP?
So in your RMCP, you would have to incorporate how often you would do it. So you would state out, for example, periodically, and what does periodically mean? It should be done as frequently as is necessary for your risk appetite, for the risk that you face as an accountable institution. And it does depend on the role. So for example, maybe if you have a larger entity and you have a compliance officer, maybe that role would need to be screened more frequently as compared to maybe me, who is just a personal assistant. Do you know what I mean? So it would depend on the role itself, and that frequency does need to be included in the RMCP.
Okay. So the other question that I would then have is, you know, if you are the deciding person to say how often your employees should be screened, how would you know if that is right or wrong? So, because say, for instance, you are sitting in a small business, you only service 100 clients a month, you've got 4 employees, you don't think it's a real risk, and you say, no, we only do those employee screenings every 5 years. You know, who's going to tell you if it's right or wrong, and what would be the reasons for that?
Leonie, I love the way you think. You think very logically. So it would depend on your risk-based approach, right? So when you're conducting your business risk assessment that Yolandi took you guys through, right? You understand am I at a greater degree of risk in terms of money laundering, terrorist financing, proliferation financing? Why am I at a greater risk? Is it my clients? Is it my products? Is it my employees? And that's how you would determine, is this good enough? Is this sufficient to mitigate the risk that I am faced with? Because remember, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. The RBA gives Leonie, gives Yolandi, gives Philip each their own discretion, but it has to be rationalized. So that's why I like the way you think it's very logical. I don't know if Yolandi or Philip wants to answer or add to that.
To be very honest, if I look at the products of our members, the majority of them have got 1 month product. The average loan size is 1,800 to 2,000 Rand. So some of our members are really struggling to see, how this can fund terrorism, how this can contribute to money laundering. Obviously, when you see something weird is happening in that person's bank account, then you can say, okay, this is a risky client, we have to do that. But the chances that it happens in somebody's business once a year, it doesn't really happen. So I want to almost identify is, how big is the risk in the microfinance industry for this specific product? And isn't this worthwhile exploring, maybe different rules for certain products? Because the risk is a little bit less.
So we don't have a rules-based approach. So I think Jan
Yes,
also
it's a
mentioned it
risk-based,
back.
yes.
Yes, Jan also mentioned it back in our previous workshop that, we had the rules-based approach, everyone complained and nobody wanted it. And now we're giving you the tools and we're giving you the discretion. And now everyone wants to go back to the rules-based approach. So there are no specific rules per product. As you conduct your business risk assessment, your entity-wide risk assessment, you need to understand this product makes me vulnerable in which way. And I identify that way and I identify what can I use as a control measure? What can I use to basically mitigate that way? I think maybe Philip can answer about the sector specific, or Yolandi about the sector specific industry concerns.
Thank you, Verona. Yes, unfortunately, we have not done a sector risk assessment on the credit provider sector following the updates that happened in December 22. What we have done, and that is available on our website, is we have done a sector risk assessment on the previous description of item 11, which basically was a very limited part of credit providers, and I think probably did not really include microfinance, institutions. And when we do an updated, and we are going to do it, I think that is very high on our priority list for this financial year. When we do an updated sector risk assessment on the whole sector, we will look at the different subsectors within the credit provider sector, and we will probably come to the conclusion, I expect, obviously we need to still do the work, that your sector is probably lower risk than, for example, banks and some of the larger lending institutions. So that's very, very possible that we will come to that conclusion. But having said that, it doesn't mean that the FICA Act, does not apply to you. Obviously,
Yes.
you still need to comply, but you follow the risk-based approach, like Verona just said.
Yeah.
So obviously, you will have to decide within your business, your individual business, which clients are high risk and potentially, and which activity could trigger and make a transaction a higher risk. So that still needs to be done.
Definitely. I think that's a brilliant answer, Philip. To say the FIC Act would still we would still have to comply, but you are going to do a sector-specific assessment. And as soon as you do that sector-specific assessment, all of our members can look at our RMCPs to say, okay, this is what we can change. This is the checks that we can save. Because in the end, we want to be financially sustainable and we want to see is where can our industry save money. At this stage, we're doing all of the checks, everything that we have to do, because we don't want to get into trouble. But if we can see that the sector specific assessments say that we are of a lower risk, we can maybe change our RMCPs to say, the risk is not that high. So, for instance, we don't have to do employee screenings every 6 months. But I think, guys, we are still in the beginning of the enactment of FIC. We are appreciative for what you guys are doing and the great answers that you are giving to us and the way that you are working, with the industry. We really have appreciation for that. And I'm also saying to members that if you have, questions to the FIC, you're not getting answers, please contact the MFSA directly, and we can also escalate some queries because sometimes we have the same questions and we just need one answer. So we don't have to, send a lot of questions to the FIC. So we are here for our members. I think from my side, that's all of the questions I'm going to ask for now, and then we are going into the next part of it. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Leonie. All right, so we are a little bit behind time, but I think it's good because the discussions are really important. So, Renal, I'm going to hand over to you to do your presentation. Take us through the services that you offer. Yes, and then we can go to Yolandi and Verona again. Okay. Renal?
Hi, Sine. Sorry, we lost you for a moment and I wasn't sure if it was my turn yet.
Okay, yes, you can proceed with your presentation, please.
Thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate the time that you're taking to I think my colleagues and I feel a little bit overwhelmed and a little bit stressed at the moment. So I want to share a little bit about what CPB is and what we do so that I can give you a little bit of alleviation from your concerns. My name is Renal Kilder and I am the Client and Legal Administration Manager at CPB. As a credit provider, we operate under a highly regulated environment. So we understand the daunting task that you faced, still making money, because let's be honest, that's why we're all here, right? In my role, I look after 2/3 of our clients, many of whom are accountable institutions such as yourselves, which means that I too have the very difficult task of chasing a target whilst keeping the compliance watchdogs happy. So I know what you're going through, and many of our clients also understand what you're going through. While my co-speakers have given you valuable insights into being and becoming a compliant, accountable institution, I'm here to share with you how CPB can become your partner of choice, not just to meet your compliance requirements, but also to help you improve your profitability. Before I dive into the how we can do that, let me tell you a bit about who we are. CPB is the second oldest credit bureau in South Africa, operating since 1981. We aggregate data from various sources to give you meaningful insights and oversights on both your current and prospective clients. Our solutions are built for the South African market, so they fit into your business. And we want to help you identify your risks, mitigate them, and still mine every opportunity. As your preferred data partner, our solutions can be tailor-fitted to both your business model as well as your budget. And you can consume our services via API integration, our platform called Bureau Suite, or in batch format. And just to give you an idea.
Renal,
yes.
sorry, can you just share your screen, please?
Oh, I'm so sorry, Sino. We actually practiced this.
No worries at all.
Okay, can you see my screen yet?
It's coming through. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Apologies, everyone. I'm clearly a little bit scared.
Okay, you can proceed, Renal. Thank you.
Okay. So just to give you an idea, we can assist you to onboard your clients for as little as 30 Rand, which is not bad, right? So now, how can we help you? CPB has solutions to cover your entire credit life cycle, and we support your business at every stage, from the initial onboarding all the way to recoveries. And our services includes tools to assist you with your customer due diligence. We've got products to help you verify the client's identity. We have a direct link with the Department of Home Affairs to verify a person's name, ID number, and living status. And we also have products that assist you with facial recognition and liveliness detection. We have a product that's called KYC, which is Know Your Customer, and it's currently being used by 2 of the major banks in South Africa for their digital onboarding. We also have address verification with the likelihood score to assist you in assessing the accuracy of the address. We have account verification tools that assist you in verifying a bank account in real time via 9 different banks, including Sasfin and Investec. We also have AML screening to help you assist in identifying your PIPs, PEPs, sanctions, and targeted watch list flags. We further also provide you with risk assessment tools. To give you an idea, we have an Eagle Eye product, which is a cost-effective pre-vetting tool to assist you to identify any potential clients and screen for any unwanted customers. We also have full credit reports for both individuals and businesses to provide you with insights into their credit exposure, their repayment behavior, judgments, insolvencies, and the like. We've got a propensity to pay, which predicts the repayment likelihood using historical payment behavior. And then we also have a strike date tool, which helps you identify the optimal date for the debit order, because timing can be everything. We also have risk management and threat detection tools. So after you've onboarded a client, we can help you to stay ahead of the curve. We've got bulk AML screening for ongoing compliance and client-based monitoring. We've got contactability enrichment products to help you keep in contact with your clients and to keep communication channels open. And then we've also got affordability scoring to support any additional lending decisions. And then lastly, we can also help you with recovery. In a perfect world, every loan would be repaid. But in our world, well, things sometimes get complicated. As a former debt collector, yes, I have been on the front lines. I can confidently say that our tracing tools are top tier. And this is supported by the fact that CPB is the preferred data provider to several leading collection firms. We are here to help you recover what is owed, ethically and efficiently. So please, feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to learn more about your business to see how we can become your preferred partner to success. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you so much, Renelle. Miranda, if you can just post that link in the chat box so that everyone can fill in their details and CPB can reach out to them. Yes, thank you, Miranda. All right, we are almost done, everyone. So we are now going into the last presentation by Yolandi and Verona, and this will focus on the reporting obligations and the record keeping. So Yolandi, Verona, over to you. Yes, Yolandi, we can see your screen. Yes.
Thank you so much. So this last part, I'll take the audience through reporting. But just before we get into the actual slides, just want to address the comment. There was a question around why has the users, they submitted the RMCP and they got back a message stating invalid structure. You may have submitted as a report type as opposed to going to my org details and actually updating your org details by uploading the RMCP under my org details. So don't submit the RMCP as a report type. you'll get a message back saying invalid structure. Yeah. So the reports, back to the reporting slides. There are 4 main reports that accountable institutions submit. For the credit providers, ignore section 31 that's highlighted in green. The main reports that you need to concentrate on: cash threshold reports, section 28, terraced property reports, section 28A, and then section 29, very, very important, suspicious and unusual transactions. There you get different subtypes of section 29 reports. You get suspicious transaction reports and suspicious activity reports. If you suspect that funds are involved in terrorist financing, a subcategory on GoML that you can submit a report as is a terrorist financing transaction report or terrorist financing activity report. So the main focus reports for credit providers are these first 3. And we'll touch a bit more on each of them in the next few slides. When do you have to refile a Section 29 report? When you think that a transaction or an activity is linked to or relates to the proceeds of unlawful activity, meaning there's a predicate crime that generated proceeds, and then that proceeds are used to pay off a loan by your client. You'd file through a Section 29 report. Or if you think in any way it facilitates the transfer of proceeds of unlawful activity, if you think it's linked to a no apparent business or lawful purpose, you can file through the report, or an evasion or attempted evasion of a duty to pay tax by your client. You can also file through the Section 29 report. If you suspect that it is linked to terrorist financing or proliferation financing, then also you would file through a suspicious and unusual transaction report. This report is based on suspicion. It's not always based on actual knowledge. So if you suspect without actual knowledge, you'd file through this report. Similarly, if you have actual knowledge there, you'd actually have to report it elsewhere. And you wouldn't actually go through with that type of transaction. So what's the implication of processing a Section 29 report? You'd continue with the transaction as normal, very important. If there's a Section 34 directive or at least order that comes through from the FIC to yourself, Section 34 would say that do not proceed with the transaction. So that's a directive that you can get from the FIC to say don't proceed for a period of 10 days. Once you've made a report under Section 29, don't inform anyone that you've made that report. Don't tip off. So a person involved in making a report may not inform anyone, including the customer or any other person associated with a reported transaction, of the contents of the suspicious transaction or activity. With Section 29 reports, there's no threshold applicable. You can report, as I've mentioned, an activity or any transaction of any amount can be filed through to the center. When the test is that you file it through as soon as you become aware of that suspicion of that transaction or activity. So don't delay on these reports. As soon as you become aware, file it through to the center. It must not be longer than 15 days. So Section 28 report, a cash threshold report, which is the more common report. If you receive a repayment of a lump sum of cash to the amount of 49,999, you have 3 days within which to file a cash threshold report through to the center. So this one is based on fact, and it's based on cash received or paid. If you're paying an amount that exceeds 49,999, then you'd also file through a cash threshold report. Section 29 report, Section 28A report at least. This report is also based on fact. So you'd screen all of your clients against the targeted financial sanctions list. If you find any one of your clients or prospective clients on this list, on the targeted financial sanctions list that's available on the FIC website, then you would file through what's referred to as a Section 28A terrorist property report. These reports must again also be filed as soon as possible and no later than 5 days after having screened your client and you've become aware that that person is on the targeted financial sanctions list. So it's very straightforward. Yeah, a TPR will be filed when the person is on the list, and also where you become aware that the person is involved in any terrorist financing. So that's where a TPR would be filed. All of these 3 different types of reports would be filed on GoAML. Remember, at the first segment, we showed you how to register on GoAML. So once you've registered and you've got an org ID, thereafter, you must keep your information up to date always. And if ever you need to file through a report, you would then log on to GoAML and you'd file through the relevant report through to the center. Sometimes when you do file through a report, make sure that it is processed. Access the submitted reports and see whether your report has in actual fact been processed. If there's anything that's wrong with your report, you can revert it, meaning it was rejected. You can revert it and then update the information under the drafted reports, and then you can click on resubmit. So it's very important for you to, again, I've mentioned it at the earlier session, monitor your GoAML message board. Monitor it at all times. It is the preferred method of the FIC now to send through notices where we're requesting information from you, such as the RMCP notice. You would have noted it was sent via the GoAML message board. Okay, so then we'll go on to RCRs. RCR, this directive was published in March 2023. So already, if you were an accountable institution, a credit provider, then this due date has come and gone. And now we are at a point where the FIC is handing out sanctions in this regard. I do urge you, if you haven't submitted your RCR, do submit it. In terms of Directive 7, Item 11. And there you'll find just an overview. An RCR is basically a questionnaire that you complete. And that questionnaire, we can then gauge your understanding of the risk that your institution faces of being abused for money laundering, terrorist financing, as well as proliferation financing. There's important points to remember when you're completing your RCR. You must complete it with your org ID, your unique identifier. And make sure that you complete it on the online questionnaire. You submit it via an online form. And the online form can be found if you go onto the FIC website. You'll see on the top banner here, it says Accountable Institutions File 2023 Risk and Compliance Returns Today. You can click on that banner. It will take you through to the RCR page, which looks like this. You'll see there, before you actually complete Directive 7, you can download a sample questionnaire to understand what questions are being asked. So you'll then download the sample there. You'll see that bottom tab there says download a sample of RCR questionnaire. It just helps you to gather all the information. When you are ready, then you come to the top tab there. The top, it should be the top right. If you're looking at the screen, it's the right tab, the right-hand tab that says complete Directive 7 RCR in the dark blue color. So you'd click on that link and then it would take you to an online form, and that's the online form that you complete. complete that without any delay. If you haven't completed it yet, please complete it without any delay. And this is just an example of the actual RCR form that you can download. So you can download it beforehand just to gather your information, which makes it easier when you're actually on the online questionnaire on the FIC website. This form was so important and is still important for the risk-based understanding of the sector and risk-based supervision. Very important from a FATF mutual evaluation perspective. So it's one of those things that still remains a priority for the center, that all accountable institutions submit their RCRs through to the center. There is your record keeping obligation. There you can keep electronic copies or hard copies of all your records. That's your CDD information, your business relationship information, and reports. Download your reports once you've submitted on the FIC website. Download them. Once the inspectors come in, they can then ask you for reports to see if you've submitted. And then you have, after a time period on GoML, it actually archives on GoML. So you won't be able to see it from your side. That's why it's important for you to download and store it. It must be kept safe. Then on to a very critical point for microfinances and credit providers as a whole is target financial sanctions. So we've mentioned the target financial sanctions is available on, the list is available on the website. But just to give you a quick rundown of the obligations that you need to comply with as an accountable institution, you must screen your clients against the target financial sanctions list, the one that's published on the FIC website, that's available at no cost for free. If you do find your client or anyone on that list, you can't provide them with funds. And if you do have any funds in your possession of them, which is not likely in the credit provider space, you would freeze that property. So there's an automatic freeze on any offering of credit to them. Or if you do hold funds of them, you would freeze it. And then you'd file through a Section 28A terrorist property report, the one that I've mentioned in a few slides earlier. So these are your three key obligations from a targeted financial sanctions perspective. In addition, I'd like to highlight, so these lists, the targeted financial sanctions list, it comprises of sanctions that are handed down by the United Nations Security Council. And South Africa is a member of the United Nations Security Council. These sanctions are aimed at terrorists and persons that are involved with proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. So there's no room for risk-based with this. You must screen all your clients. And that's why even when you onboard your employees, you must screen your employees before appointment. There's no risk-based involved in this. It's an obligation that stands. You must do it. The risk is there, even for and a terrorist activity needs the smallest of finances. So that the risk is immense. And it's a risk that you must mitigate. In addition, there is what's referred to as a domestic list at least. It's Section 23 of Poctatara actually provides for South Africa can publish the National Department of Public Prosecutors can actually seek an order for the freezing of persons in South Africa, freezing of funds of persons that are based in South Africa, where they think that those persons are conducting terrorist activity. So this is very important from a domestic designation perspective. South Africa can also designate persons and subject them to targeted financial sanctions, targeted freezes. The FIC published a notice in February on the first court order that was handed down in terms of Section 23 of Paktatara. What accountable institutions had to do is they then had to take that court order and screen their clients against that court order to see if any of the clients are listed on the court order. And if there's anyone listed on that court order, you would freeze whatever services you're rendering to that person, and you'd file through a terrorist property report. So there, I think, Verona, if you can maybe just provide the link to this court order, it would assist. On the FIC website, you'd go to the Targeted Financial Sanctions tab, and you could go to Published Notices, and you'd find all the published notices. There is also the free search tool, which you can actually screen your clients against. So go onto the FIC website, click on Search Tool, and you can then screen your clients and your employees. This is the search. This is the search screen. So you'd complete the name and surname of your potential client or your client, and you click on Search. If no results come up, just take a screenshot of that, and that keep that as evidence that you've actually screened your client against the list. Yeah, do that without delay before you provide any services to a client. If there are updates to the list, when there are updates, you must also screen against this list without delay. It's one of those important points. Definitely a point that was highlighted in the mutually evaluation outcomes. It's something us as a country needs to really work towards, making sure that all accountable institutions screen their clients against the targeted financial sanctions lists. So yeah, it's very straightforward. This is your key. This is the screen you're going to screen against. And you're just going to keep a screenshot showing if there's no results, that's fine, you can proceed. If there is a match, you will freeze and you'll file through a Section 28A terrorist property report to the center. Yeah, and that is then it from my side. I want to reiterate that during the month of March, we have received an influx of queries. So two of the questions that I've saw that Donovan and so forth have sent through comments stating that they have submitted queries. Your queries definitely will be looked at. We have received quite a lot of queries during the month of March, so that is what we are working on right now, clearing out all of those queries. Same applies if you've submitted the RMCP in accordance with what I've showed you earlier on, the right format convention, and you've attached it correctly, then it should be okay from your side. You would have received a message saying that it's submitted, and thereafter a shrek saying accepted or rejected. That's it from my side. Thank you so much, Sinay.
Yes, thank you, Yolandi. We really appreciate your time and the information that you have shared with us. We will not be taking any questions. I don't see any pressing questions as well in the chat box. So, yes, Yolandi, Verona, we really want to thank you for your presentations, for making time to present to our members and to our industry. So, we are now going to look at two more presentations from Searchworks and then XDS. So, Marseille, I'm going to welcome you to present to our members, and then we will go to XDS. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you for your time today. I just want to share my screen quick. While I'm sharing my screen, I am the relationship manager for Searchworks 360. I've been with the company for about 10 years. Wait, I can't do two things at once. I've been with the company for about 10 years. Just to give you a bit of background, can you see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So just to give you a bit of background, Searchworks is one of the biggest data aggregators in South Africa. We've been in business for 20 years. What we do is we are integrated with 34 different suppliers, Home Affairs, 6 different credit bureaus, which are most also attending this workshop, Home Affairs, CIPC data, Deeds Office data. We can basically supply any verification information from our ID verification to trace information to even letter of demands and default listings for non-paying clients. In 2022, we've created then also a report, the Know Your Client, Know Your Business report. And that is also when VOCA was born. We realized very quickly that our clients and all future clients need something more specific and automated to assist with the FIC compliances. So we've created VOCA in 2024. This is now new to Searchworks, your verification, onboarding and compliance application. VOCA can be done as a front end, and also there's an API integration available where we can map your processes exactly to how you want to work with your processes. So no need to change any of your things. VOCA is an automated system to apply with your FIC compliances. So what VOCA does, I just want to try and keep it short. What VOCA does, we have the comprehensive verification options with a seamless onboarding process where the verification process, you basically enter your ID number or your company registration number. All your information will be pulled through from Searchworks, which is live and real-time information, meaning up-to-date information. And to offer automated compliance for your convenience, where it will also include your questionnaire as well as your risk assessment. Your questionnaire according to FIC specifications, what is needed. Your risk assessment will be adjusted according to your RMCP, and then it will also give you an option to upload all your relative documents that is linked to that process, like copy of ID or proof of res. Then the additional extra is also your free ongoing monitoring for all your existing clients while you work with that client for that time period. The system will automatically scan on all the PEP and sanctions, almost 200 PEP and sanctions list, AML, TFS, all included, international, and it will give you a free notification when that person you are dealing with lands themselves on any PEP and sanctions, AML, or adverse news in the meantime. That is just basically, that is just as I mentioned. We can create, VOCA is completely customizable. We can add the questionnaires according to your RMCP. We create the risk assessment according to your RSMP, and also create your documents upload according to RMCP. We also have the option where you can do your bank. Oh, apologies, I'm going backwards. We also have the option where you can do your bank verification. Oh my goodness. I don't know what happened now. Apologies. Where you can do your bank account verification, and it can also return a SARS VAT verification, along with your proof of residence, your ID identification, and all of the above, as I mentioned. Okay, I'm back on track. Searchworks, the benefits of VOCA is it's giving you enhanced security so that you know who you are dealing with, the client you are dealing with. The compliance, as I also mentioned, that's the ongoing monitoring, so you can check your clients if they maybe land themselves on PEP and sanctions at a later stage. Just quickly on how the process works. So you will need to register for your VOCA account. And once you are registered and up and running, it's a quick and easy process. We are web-based. So you log into VOCA with your username and your password. And you can, from there on, you enter your ID number or your company registration. Also, we cater also for trust information, your basic AML on trust, and foreign companies and foreign individuals. Where you enter your information, your rule set will come up, your questionnaire, which you can then finish later. Obviously, you won't have all the answers to do that at one stage. And then you can get your answers from the information supplied. Your KYC report will be returned back to you with all the answers, which will then show whether that individual is on PEP and sanctions or flagged for anything, whether his address is a match, his ID number is a match, and all of that. You can then go back and finish your questionnaire according to the information received and also obviously according to the information supplied by the client, and it will give you your risk assessment. I just want to show you basically what it will look like. So this is where you will create your client on your client profile. From here, you'll do your new verification. All verifications that's been done on that client will be in your history. This will stay for 5 years. It will be in your history. You can go back into it at any time where you do your new verification. And once you get audited, you can download this package. Say, for instance, they say, listen, we want to audit on this and this specific client. You can download your complete package where your risk assessment will be in your, let me just go on. Your risk assessment will be in, as well as this is basically what your report will look like. Your risk assessment with your questionnaire. There it will show you whether the client is a low or medium risk. Oh, I've done it again. I'm so sorry. It will show you whether your client, I don't know why it's doing this. Why, if your client is a low or medium risk. Let me just go on again. And whether it's a failed client, there's then also on your search types, apologies, I'm back. So there's your what your report will look like, and this will give you options where it will fail. I just want to close this. Sorry. There's your options where it will show you whether it failed, passed, or what the results is on your questionnaires answered, and also on the risk assessment customized according to your RMCP. Obviously, when your client is a medium or high risk, you have to see especially high risk and what the reasons is for, and then go and report. Once you get audited on this client, you can just download this package, and this will include your risk assessment, your detailed KYC report as pulled through from SearchWorks with all your information on, and also all the documents that you have uploaded, which is quite easy. It saves you a lot of time. You can just forward that whole package to your auditor, and they can work from there. Then once your client is also created, your verification was done, you will automatically also be on the ongoing monitoring. Once you're done with the client, there will be an option to disable the client so you don't get notification on the client anymore. Also, the ongoing monitoring, once you have your client, if your client comes back after some time and they want to do business with you again, your client will already be on the profile. You can just go and re-verify and upload new documents and answer the questions from the beginning. You don't have to go and create the client from scratch. Then we have the second part of this whole process. This is an additional option. Not everyone wants to use this. Some clients prefer using this. Other clients don't want to use it, as everyone is not up to date with the technology. But this is where you can also send a link to the client where they can upload their own documents and they can answer their own questions, which can also be customized according to your preferences and your RMCP. And then after that, the client, this also especially works nicely if the client can't come into your offices to meet face to face. That is also one of the FICA requirements or questionnaires, then or risk assessments. You can then send out a link where the client can do a facial verification if he's maybe overseas or in another province or for some reason cannot come into the office. There's also that option. This is what the onboarding will look like. The link will be sent to the client. He will receive an OTP, a secure OTP, which can be entered in here, and then it will be directed to doing the onboarding, the facial verification, and answer the questions. It's a quick and easy process where when he then submits, the information will immediately be available for you, for your viewing, and you can, again, your risk assessment, everything is in one package, which you can then combine with your normal verification. And that is it from me. If you want a detailed presentation or discussion, my information will also be be posted in the chat. You're welcome just to contact me. We do have consultants nationwide, which can do an on-site presentation, or we can do it online. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, I think, Miranda, if you can just post that link and everyone can reach out to VOCA, we will share your contact details with them if you have completed it in that link. Okay, then we are going into our last presentation, definitely last but not least. We are going to welcome XTS Grobler. Thank you so much. You're welcome to proceed with your presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody. I've got Pia here with me as well. We're all both in the same room, just so that everybody's aware. Let me just share my screen.
Hi everybody, it's Shanae. I'm going to start off this presentation.
Perfect. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Pia. Okay, so introduction, XDS, as everybody know, it is a well-known credit bureau that's operating within the borders of South Africa. We do focus on fraud prevention, detection, facial recognition, credit vetting, NCR, FICA compliance, and then some in-house analytic capabilities that we've got.
There we go.
Okay. So just a little bit more about us. Okay, so it seems like jumping all over. Just a quick couple of points about XDS. I'm not going to go into details as I've heard that we are the last, and I don't want to keep everybody from wherever, I believe lunch. If you need more details, you're welcome to engage with myself or Grobler on those items. And then just lastly, before we step into the product specifics, our industry footprint, as you can note, is quite across various industries. And notwithstanding that microlending is a big part of our footprint and focus on growth and obviously assisting in putting products and solutions in place to assist the microlenders to align and get compliant. So with that, I'm just going to hand over to Grobler. He's going to take us a bit more detailed with relevant to today with FIC. And please, I want to invite anybody that have questions or would like to have a more detailed discussion or one-on-one sessions to engage with us. We'll gladly step up and set up some sessions. Thanks, Grobler.
Thank you very much, Pia. So on this slide, we'll be covering high-level sanctions. So we do currently have a sanctions or compliance exposure, as we call it, product. It will check the sanctions lists, PIPs, PEPs, adverse media screening. We've got two offerings within the sanctions environment or sanctions suite. We'll cover that in a little bit more detail in the next slide. High level, we do check the real-time IDV on the premium, internal bureau on the standard product. From a KYC perspective, now from an industry perspective, KYC is more know your customer. In XDS world, we've got a product called KYC, which is more geared towards address verification, where you can provide us with an address. We will then verify that address to addresses we hold at bureau from different sources. I just want to mention as well, as you see on the far right-hand side, we do have a KYC Advanced. It's a new product. We are just working on the last little bit of refinement on the matching logic. We will bring that out to market very, very soon. The difference between the KYC and the KYC Advanced is basically the flexibility and configurability of KYC Advanced. We bring back a confidence score, which will tell you the address that we hold, what is the confidence of that address matching the address that you provided as part of input. We can match against specific periods. So there's an initial match where we can say, look at a 2-year period only. If no match is found, we can extend that period to say 10 years as an example. We've built in exclusions lists to say, let's not check our own homework. So if microlender 1 finds an address that microlender 1 has submitted, exclude that from the matching of sources, which means all other sources will be then seen as valid matches. Moving into a little bit more detail around the compliance exposure or sanction screening. As mentioned, we've got 2 offerings. Now you'll see 3 tabs at the bottom. It's a little bit confusing, but premium and light goes hand in hand. They're both from the premium stack. Within the premium stack, we check PIPs, PEPs, adverse media, as well as sanctions list. The premium checks over 900 global lists. It checks the adverse media that's updated on a daily basis. We also do a real-time IDV for the premium. The light version, as I mentioned, also falls within the premium stack. The difference between the two is the premium by itself will give you all the data, the different articles, why this person was listed and not listed, whereas the light will just give you a high-level indicator. So if you get a green tag, everything is great. There's no hits found on the data subject. Whereas when we list an amber indicator or tag, you know there is something going on and further investigation will have to be done on the individual. The standard offering is a lot less lists. So there's about 40, I think it's 42 now. We've increased the list. The targeted financial services lists are on there. PIPs, PEPs, sanctions, as mentioned, is screened. The adverse media on the standard is a little bit low at the moment, but we are working to increase that. Then just moving on to identity verification, XDS has got a whole host of identity verification products. I've just mentioned 4 on here. There's quite a bit more. So we do have what we call DOVES, which is the remote facial verification, where we will also send out a link to the data subject. We'll take a selfie. We'll determine the liveness based on the moving forwards and backwards. We will match the selfie from that video that's taken to the picture held at Home Affairs, and we'll give you a result back. Now, in some cases, there are no photos at Home Affairs. In those cases, what we recommend is KBA, or knowledge-based authentication. It's those 5 questions that usually gets asked when you phone a call center to determine you are who you are. Now, KBA works on the data elements held on a specific data subject, as well as information we get from Home Affairs, which then triggers certain questions. We ask those questions to the data subject, and if the questions are answered correctly, the data subject is then seen as verified. We also have finger verification, fairly straightforward. Device install, the data subject will present their finger or fingerprint to the device. XDS will receive that, present it to Home Affairs, and validate the individual by the fingerprint provided. Multi-factor authentication, it's a very straightforward tool. We're using USSD, where the agent will provide the ID number as well as the telephone number. We will then send a USSD link through to the data subject. The data subject can then either accept or reject the USSD. When the USSD is accepted, XDS can then present additional information on the data subject, like SIM swap information, just to further enhance whether the USSD that was sent might be at risk of a fraudster having access to that USSD that has been sent. Anything else, Pierre, that you would like to add?
No, I think that's it. It's high level on the offerings that we've got. These offerings are available, API, portal, various ways you can use this, incorporate that in your solutions. And this will allow you to much more custom your needs into what would fit your business processes.
Just to add on that, Pierre, batch capabilities is also available through the sanction side of things. So if you do have a cleanup that you want to run on data that you currently hold, we do have the batch capability to run it out through either premium or the standard product offerings. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Pierre and Grobler. We really do appreciate it. So we are also going to post a link. Thank you, Miranda. If you want XTS to reach out to you, please fill in that link so that they can contact you. Okay, so we are almost done, everyone, and I really want to thank you. I see we are on 249 people at this moment. It was a long workshop, but it was definitely beneficial, so thank you for sticking it out. We also have a survey that we want to ask you to just complete for us. We really value your feedback, and if we see what you prefer and which sessions works the best, we would be able to draft and edit and put another workshop together that really will speak speak to your needs. So Miranda, thank you for posting that survey. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. Just one last thank you to all of our service providers, to the sponsors that participated. Yolandi, Verona, once again, we really want to extend our sincere appreciation for your time and the information that you have shared with us. We will share the questions with you, and if we can get that in writing, share it with the attendees, it would really be great. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time once again. You must have a wonderful day further and also enjoy the long weekend that's coming up. Thank you. Have a
Thank you very
good
much. Have a lovely day.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.